Chapter 1725. At the peak of a 1,000-foot-tall mountain, outside the Phantom Mountain Range, there was a huge green millstone in the middle of a lush forest. Yun Yao stood next to the boulder and looked worriedly at Ji Tianxing, who was lying on the boulder. She was channeling her energy into Ji Tianxing's body, channeling the dark green longevity god force into his body. At that moment, Ji Tianxing was lying on the millstone. His entire body was burning red and trembling. Previously, he had been tortured by Demon King Owl Knight, and his heart had been eaten by the Azura heart-devouring worm. Almost a third of his Kenshin bloodline had been devoured. After that, he had escaped with Yin Yao, but was intercepted by Ghost Child. He had been forced to fight Ghost Child. The repeated encounters had almost depleted his strength. His body was getting weaker and weaker, and his injuries were worsening. When Yin Yao brought him out of the demon's den and flew here, he could no longer hold on, and had completely lost consciousness. Fortunately, Yin Yao had channeled her longevity divine power into him to maintain his life. Otherwise he would have died long ago. While Yin Yao was channeling her powers to save Ji Tianxing, she was also praying silently in her heart that Grandma Long would arrive soon. Under the night sky, the mountain peak was silent. There was only a gentle breeze blowing. However, Yin Yao was filled with anxiety and worry. Fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Time seemed to pass very slowly. After a long while, a 5-colored light flew over from the night sky. Whoosh! The multicolored light landed on the mountain range, and landed beside Yin Yao. As the light dissipated, Grandma Long's figure appeared. Her robes were wrinkled, and her white hair was a little messy. Her old face was filled with anxiety. After landing, her gaze landed on Ji Tianxing. She asked Yin Yao in a concerned tone. Yin Yao, you said in your transmission jade slip that Ji Tianxing was seriously injured and unconscious. His life is in danger. Don't you have the longevity divine power that can bring the dead back to life? What the hell is going on? Yin Yao gave Ji Tianxing her godly power, as she explained to Granny Long what had happened. After Granny Long heard this, she was dumbfounded and showed a shocked expression. What? Ji Tianxing actually has Kenshin blood? Was it the Kenshin who had fallen 1,000 years ago? If this was true, then it was truly inconceivable. No wonder this kid's talent is so outstanding that he can be called the #1 genius of the 3 divine kingdoms. In a moment of panic, Yun Yao casually mentioned that Ji Tianxing possessed the Kenshin bloodline when she told them what had happened. Hearing Granny Long's words, she realized that she had misspoken and immediately regretted it. However, after thinking about it, Granny Long was a trustworthy person. Even if they knew the secret, it wouldn't be detrimental to Ji Tianxing. Therefore she nodded and said, "That's right. The leader of the demon clan has always wanted to snatch the Kenshin bloodline and sees Tianxing as his mortal enemy. In order to snatch the Kenshin bloodline, the demon clan would do anything, and their methods are so vicious that it makes one's hair stand on end. Demon King Xiaoye's Azura heart-devouring worm is still in Tianxing's heart. You must think of a way to save him." Granny Long then regained her senses and suppressed the shock in her heart. She cursed angrily. Damn Demon King Xiaoye. He is so cruel and vicious. In order to snatch Ji Tianxing's Kenshin bloodline, he actually used the extremely vicious Azura heart-devouring worm. This demonic creature is one of the top evil creatures in the Ghost clan, and it can even poison a martial sage. It is said that 1,000 years ago, Emperor Tian Wu was implanted with the Azura heart-devouring worm by the 3 great demon sages. His heart and flesh were devoured, and he died a horrible death. At the mention of the Azura heart-devouring worm, Granny Long looked fearful, and her eyes were filled with anger. Yun Yao understood what Granny Long meant, and she asked anxiously, "Granny Long, do you mean that you are unable to save Tianxing?" Granny Long looked grave and sighed. She then nodded and said, "Although this result has disappointed you, I am not confident that I can get rid of the Azura heart-devouring worm. I'll check his injuries first and try my best." After speaking, she raised her palms and shot out a ray of white light into Ji Tianxing's body. She closed her eyes and focused on sensing the condition of Ji Tianxing's body. After 10 breaths, she finished checking on Suemo and opened her eyes. Her gaze softened, Yunyao, you don't have to worry. Tianqing's body is fine. The most serious injury is that his heart is damaged and has been taken over by the Azura heart-devouring worm. However, even though he was unconscious, there was a divine power protecting his heart the entire time. That vicious Azura heart-devouring worm is trapped in his heart for the time being and can't continue to do evil. The immortality divine power you just transferred to him can also maintain the vitality of his body. It won't die for 3 to 5 days. Hearing this, Yunyao was startled for a moment. Then, her eyes widened with deep worry. Granny Long, could it be that Tianqing's heart can no longer maintain the life of his body? Granny Long nodded with a heavy expression and explained, his heart is too damaged and has stopped working. If he were an ordinary martial artist, his body would have died. But Tianqing's body is special, and he has the immortality divine power to provide vitality. So he can still live for a few days. Yunyao panicked and begged anxiously, Granny Long, Tianqing's body has been tempered thousands of times. It is a rare treasure body. It can't be destroyed like this. Once his body is destroyed, he will lose the Kenshin bloodline, and his future in martial arts will be ruined. No matter what, please save his life. You can't let him. Before Yunyao could finish, Granny Long interrupted her and comforted her with a kind voice. Yunyao, don't worry. Tianqing is a disciple of Luotian Mountain, and a god's disciple that the Divine Master thinks highly of. Of course, I will do my best to save him. Although I may not be able to save him with my strength and means, there is someone who can save him. However, there is someone who can definitely save him, and will definitely be willing to save him. Who is it? Yunyao looked like a drowning person who saw a life-saving straw. Her eyes glowed with a strong desire. Granny Long smiled and said, let's go back to Luotian Mountain first. I promise you that I won't let anything happen to Tianqing. After saying that, Granny Long took out a few talismans from her interspatial ring and used them to teleport. Flowing light talisman. She cast a golden talisman. The talisman turned into a golden flowing light and enveloped her, Yunyao, and Ji Tianqing. Then, the golden flowing light flew into the night sky and flew towards Luotian Mountain at an unparalleled speed. In just one night, the golden flowing light flew 1/3 of the way before it dissipated. Granny Long used the second flowing light talisman and brought Yunyao and Ji Tianqing to continue their journey. Originally, it would take 5 days and 5 nights to travel from Mirage Mountain to Luotian Mountain. Chapter 1726. In a daze, Ji Tianqing regained some of his consciousness. He felt as if he had woken up, but he could not open his eyes and his consciousness was hazy. This made him understand that he had not really woken up and was still in a deep sleep. But in the depths of his mind, clear and complete images kept appearing, as if they were in a dream. He saw that he was in a dazzling palace. This palace was located in the clouds, surrounded by a sea of white clouds. It was like a heavenly palace, isolated from the rest of the world. The interior of the palace was richly ornamented, with golden railings and jade bricks. Everywhere was luxurious and noble. In the depths of the palace, there was a large and exquisitely decorated secret room. The secret room was dimly lit. The walls and floor were inlaid with precious gems, forming a vast and mysterious array, exuding a sacred and majestic aura. In the corner of the secret room, there was a pool of water about 3 feet wide. The pool was filled with icy blue water, with white smoke rising in spirals, exuding an icy cold air. And he himself was lying flat in the icy blue pool, with his eyes closed. There was a hint of pain between his brows. His whole body was boiling red, exuding a terrifyingly high temperature, like a red-hot soldering iron. The extremely high temperature actually steamed the icy water in the pool, causing steam to rise and boil. Vaguely, Ji Tianqing's gaze pierced through the curling mist and saw a graceful woman dressed in an icy blue long dress standing beside the cold pool. The hazy steam covered her face, making Ji Tianqing unable to see her face clearly. But her figure was slender and graceful. Her temperament was graceful like water, exuding a noble and sacred aura, like a fairy from the 9th heaven. At this moment, she was staring at Ji Tianqing, stretching out her fair and tender hands, forming a seal to release a 5-colored divine light, which was injected into Ji Tianxing's body. Ji Tianxing's chest was enveloped by a ball of 5-colored divine light, and it was quietly changing. Even though it was a dream, Ji Tianxing did not feel any pain, as if his chest and heart had never been injured. He could only feel that the 5-colored divine light was emitting a cool aura, causing the heat in his body to dissipate. He tried his best to widen his eyes, trying to see through the hazy mist and see the face of the woman in the blue dress. However, the mist continued to rise, blocking his line of sight. The face of the woman in the blue dress seemed to be covered by a layer of hazy gauze, making it impossible for Ji Tianxing to see clearly. Ji Tianxing's consciousness became more and more blurry. Unknowingly, he fell into a deep sleep. The dream in the depths of his mind also dissipated. He didn't know how long he had been asleep, or what he had experienced. It could be a day, a month, or a few months. After a long time, his consciousness finally awakened from his deep sleep. He finally regained his senses and was truly awake. He only felt that his eyelids were very heavy. It took him a long time to gradually open his eyes. What came into view was a large bed inlaid with sandalwood and jade, with white gauze curtains hanging on all sides. He was lying on a warm and wide bed, covered with a light golden brocade quilt. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. It was the scent that he was most familiar with and was most attached to. He immediately realized that he was in Yun Yao's room. He turned his head slightly to look at the side of the bed. Sure enough, he saw a graceful figure in a white dress sitting at a table not far away. Just by looking at the back, he could tell that it was Yun Yao. Yun Yao sat quietly at the table with one hand supporting her chin. She stared at the cup of spirit tea on the table in a daze. The tea had already turned cold, but the cup was still full. She hadn't taken a sip. Seeing Yun Yao by his side, Ji Tianxing's mind calmed down, and a trace of warmth welled up in his heart. He lowered his head to look at his chest, and saw that it had returned to its original state under the white robe. There wasn't even a scar left. He calmed his heart and felt for a moment. His chest was also normal. There wasn't any pain or discomfort. There was no doubt that his injuries had healed. The Azura heart-devouring worm that had drilled into his heart had long been removed. He slowly raised his body and sat up bit by bit with his hands on the quilt. Other than his head being a little dizzy, he didn't feel any discomfort from head to toe. His spirit and magic power were also in peak condition. As soon as he sat up, Yun Yao, who was in a daze and deep in thought, sensed the movement and was immediately awakened. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was awake, she immediately revealed a relieved expression. She quickly asked, "Tianxing, you're finally awake. How do you feel?" As she spoke, Yun Yao quickly came to the bedside and helped Ji Tianxing sit up. Ji Tianxing pulled her to the bedside and smiled at her. He comforted her. "Don't worry. My injuries have all healed. I'm fine now." Yun Yao sized him up. Seeing that he was indeed normal, she was slightly relieved. "By the way, Tianxing, a part of your Qinshan bloodline was devoured by the Azura heart-devouring worm. How are you now? Have you recovered your Qinshan bloodline?" Ji Tianxing nodded. "I've completely recovered. The devoured divine blood has also been purified and returned to my body. By the way, my heart was destroyed and my body was almost dead. The Azura heart-devouring worm is a rare and powerful devil of the demon race. It's very difficult to deal with. Yao Yao, do you know who saved me?" Yun Yao was startled. She shook her head and said, "After Granny Long brought us back to Luotian Mountain, she asked me to stay in Cloudwater Palace to recuperate. She brought you alone and left Luotian Mountain for a few days. I don't know where she went. By the time she brought you back, your injuries had already healed." Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and muttered to himself, "So Granny Long didn't tell you who saved me?" Yun Yao nodded. Granny Long seemed to be hiding something. She didn't reveal any information. "Understood." Ji Tianxing nodded. An icy blue figure appeared in his mind. He vaguely guessed a certain possibility. "By the way, Yao Yao, how long have I been unconscious?" Yun Yao replied, "You were already unconscious when we left Mirage Mountain. If we count from that day, You've been unconscious for 10 days. I've been unconscious for so long. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and continued to ask, what about Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu? Are they all right? Yun Yao shook her head. They're fine. Although they suffered heavy injuries, they've returned safely. Ji Tianxing recalled what happened 10 days ago. His eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent. What about Demon Monarch Xiaoyi? Did Granny Long kill him? This he didn't. Yun Yao showed a regretful expression and explained. Demon Monarch Xiaoyi wasn't Granny Long's match. He was beaten black and blue. After you killed Ghost Child, Demon Monarch Xiaoyi saw that the situation was bad and used a secret technique to escape. At that time, Granny Long was worried about our safety and chased after us. She didn't pursue Demon Monarch Xiaoyi. Chapter 1727. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao talked for a long time. Through Yun Yao's narration, he knew what happened in the past 10 days. Granny Long took the unconscious him and left Luotian Mountain. Yun Yao and the two god envoys were injured, so they stayed on Luotian Mountain to recuperate. 2 days ago, Granny Long brought him back. At that time, he was still in a deep sleep, but his injuries had already healed. The Azura heart-devouring worm had also disappeared. Granny Long stayed on Luotian Mountain and didn't go out. However, she stayed in Sky Universe Palace and seemed to be busy with something. It was very mysterious. When Sky Universe Palace was mentioned, Ji Tianxing asked casually, Yao Yao, when I first came to Luotian Mountain, you introduced Sky Universe Palace to me. It seems to be a palace of array formations, right? Everything related to array formations is there. What is Granny Long doing in Sky Universe Palace? Yin Yao shook her head lightly and said, I don't know either. Maybe Granny Long is setting up some array formations. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and asked again. Granny Long said that the Divine Master gave an order for Luotian Mountain to save Yu Wei's corpse and purify the blood skeleton. However, when we went to 100 Flower Valley, the blood skeleton and the 10,000 bone demon had already disappeared. On our way back, we were attacked by Demon King Owl Knight and Ghost Child. Other than Granny Long, we were all heavily injured and suffered heavy losses. Are we just going to let this matter go? Did Granny Long mention anything about Yu Wei? Yun Yao thought for a moment and answered. Since the Divine Master gave an order, Luotian Mountain must complete it no matter what. They will definitely try to save Yu Wei's corpse. Although Granny Long didn't reveal any plans, I'm sure that she won't give up just like that. She's probably planning something in Sky Universe Palace, right? Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, Since that's the case, let's go and take a look. Then, he and Yun Yao left Cloud Water Palace and rushed to Sky Universe Palace together. Sky Universe Palace was located at the northwest corner of Luotian Mountain, near the cliff. The palace occupied a large area and was built in a dignified manner. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao arrived outside the palace, they saw a group of golden-armored guards guarding the palace entrance. There were also 2 young geniuses who wanted to enter the Sky Universe Palace to have an audience with Granny Long, but they were stopped by the golden-armored guards outside the gate. Coincidentally, the 2 young geniuses were both God's disciples, and Ji Tianxing knew one of them. It was a young man dressed in luxurious clothes. He was tall and had a graceful bearing. His name was Zobin. Seeing that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had arrived, Zobin hurriedly came forward to greet them. Eldest senior brother, eldest senior sister, long time no see. Junior brother Zo, how have you been? Yun Yao nodded at him. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and asked, Zobin, why are you here? Zobin explained, Recently, I've been comprehending an incomplete array left behind by an ancient sage. I encountered some problems and wanted to come to the Sky Universe Palace to have an audience with Granny Long. By the way, I heard that you went to the Black Frost Empire with Granny Long and encountered an accident. You were seriously injured. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, That's true. However, my injuries have recovered. Zobin hurriedly nodded and said, When everyone heard the news, they were worried about you. It's great that you're fine. Ji Tianxing chatted with him for a while, and then led Yun Yao to the palace entrance. The golden-armored guards checked their identity badges and opened the door to let them in. Seeing this, Zobin immediately frowned and asked the captain of the guards, "I'm here to have an audience with Granny Long. I tried my best to explain to you, but you didn't let me in. Why did you let eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister in without a second thought?" The captain of the guards glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "Granny Long told us that except for the god's emissaries Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao, no one is to disturb them." Zobin was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled bitterly and turned to leave. At the same time, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao entered the Sky Universe Palace. Under the guidance of a guard, they passed through several corridors, passages, and stairs and finally arrived at the main hall on the first floor of the underground palace. The underground palace was the forbidden area of the Sky Universe Palace. It was not open to ordinary disciples and God's disciples. This place stored the secret skills of Array Dao, all kinds of precious books and treasures. In the dimly lit main hall, the floor was paved with psychic white jade. The surface of the floor was engraved with dense array patterns. Granny Long was standing in the air. She was making hand seals with both of her hands. Streaks of dazzling light were constantly injected into the ground in the middle of the main hall. In the middle of the main hall, there was a grayish-white light shield that was 1,000 feet wide. It was shining with a mysterious light and emitting a powerful aura. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao immediately understood that Granny Long was setting up a big array. The two of them did not disturb her. They stood quietly in the corner of the main hall and waited patiently. Fortunately, the big array was basically completed. 4 hours later, the big array was completely completed. Granny Long then stopped casting the spell. She slowly stopped and landed on the ground from the air. The grayish-white light shield that was 1,000 feet wide became round. Its power had also increased by a few levels. It was extremely powerful. Granny Long walked in front of the two of them. She looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "Tianxing, have you recovered from your injuries?" "Yes. Thank you for saving my life, Granny Long." Ji Tianxing nodded and bowed to her. Granny Long showed a gratified smile and waved her hand. "No need to be so polite. You are a god's disciple of the Luotian Mountain. It's natural for me to save you." Yun Yao pointed at the light shield in the middle of the main hall and asked doubtfully, "Granny Long, after you returned to the Luotian Mountain, you stayed in the Sky Universe Palace to set up this big array?" Granny Long nodded and said, "Yes." Yin Yao asked again, "Why did you set up this big array?" Granny Long showed a meaningful smile and said mysteriously, "Of course, it has an important purpose." Yin Yao slightly frowned and said in a heavy tone, "The God Lord ordered us to save Yu Wei's body, but we were too late. The demon clan of the North Underworld Mountain was too arrogant. They sneaked into the divine nation and attacked us. Tianxing almost lost his life. Granny Long, are we just going to let this matter go? Don't you want to continue investigating?" Granny Long combed her white hair and said with a solemn face, "Our divine nation and the ghost clan of the North Underworld Mountain have an indelible hatred. In this operation, we suffered a great loss. Tianxing almost lost his life and lost his Kenshin bloodline. How can I just let this matter go? If I can't save Yu Wei's body, I won't have the face to see the God Lord in the future. This big array is called the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array. It's a saint-level array that I set up with great care." Chapter 1728. Granny Long's words stunned Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao. Only then did the two of them realize that Granny Long would never give up, and had come up with a new plan. However, the two of them looked at the array in the middle of the hall with puzzled expressions. "Granny Long, how can this Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array save Yu Wei's remains?" asked Ji Tianxing, puzzled. "Yu Wei was corroded to death by demonic qi," explained Granny Long in a low voice. "Her remains couldn't be buried, and were refined into the evil blood skeleton. Her soul dissipated between heaven and earth, and will never be reincarnated. She won't even have the chance to reincarnate. The secluded soul sealing array that I set up can summon the scattered soul fragments of Yu Wei through her belongings and gather her remnant soul. Then, we can use her remnant soul to find her remains." Upon hearing her explanation, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao understood. It turned out that Granny Long wanted to use this method to find the missing blood skeleton. The myriad skeletal fiend and the blood skeleton have gone missing. Yunyao slightly nodded and said, "If this method works, we can find the blood skeleton as soon as possible and rescue it." Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and asked, "Granny Long, since this nether passage soul sealing array can condense Yu Wei's remnant soul, doesn't that mean she still has a chance to be reincarnated?" "That's not the case." Granny Long quickly shook her head and explained, "This old woman only has this plan, but it may not be able to successfully gather Yu Wei's remnant soul. Besides, the remnant souls gathered by this array are actually illusory soul fragments that can never be healed, let alone reincarnated." Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding and sighed. "What a pity." Granny Long also felt a bit regretful and said in a heavy tone, "Yu Wei has been dead for thousands of years. It's impossible for her to be resurrected. To her, her remains can be freed and her soul can be reincarnated. That's the best result." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao both nodded. "This old woman originally planned to tell you the plan after the spell was successfully cast," said Granny Long again. "Since you're already here, just stay here and watch. I'll cast a spell to summon Yu Wei's remnant soul." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao wanted to help, but they didn't know much about the nether passage soul sealing array, so they could only stand there and watch. Granny Long flew to the center of the hall and stood above the gray light shield. She took out a blood-red crystal from her interspatial ring and placed it in the middle of the array. That blood-colored crystal was none other than the one the blood skull had given to Ji Tianxing. After Ji Tianxing returned to the Luotian mountain, he handed the crystal to Granny Long. After that, Granny Long handed the crystal to Luoshui martial god. Luoshui martial god had observed the crystals and determined the identity of the blood skull. Now the blood-red crystal appeared in Granny Long's hands. Ji Tianxing immediately understood that Granny Long must have come into contact with martial god Luo Shui. The conjecture in his mind was immediately confirmed. But Granny Long must have her reasons for deliberately hiding this information. He wouldn't expose her, and could only pretend that he didn't know anything. At this time, Granny Long closed her eyes with a solemn expression and silently circulated her boundless magic power. Her robes and white hair fluttered violently. She slowly raised her palms and sent out a mysterious white light into the array's light shield. Immediately, the nether passage soul sealing array was activated and quickly operated. Dense patterns appeared on the oval-shaped array's light shield, revealing all kinds of strange patterns. An invisible and vast power erupted from the formation and spread out in all directions, extending into the heavens and the earth. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could both sense that the formless and mysterious power was constantly spreading between heaven and earth, as if it could cover the entire continent. The two of them stared intently at the array and watched Granny Long cast her spell. As time passed, the magic power Granny Long channeled into the array became more and more powerful. The array's light shield also lit up with an even more dazzling brilliance and emitted an even more terrifying aura. Of course, the two of them also had a deeper understanding of the nether passage soul sealing array. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. Finally, a wisp of gray aura appeared in the array's light shield, faintly discernible as it floated. The blood-red crystal also lit up with a scarlet light, rising like a flame. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's spirits were lifted, revealing a look of anticipation. Obviously, Granny Long's plan had succeeded. The nether passage soul sealing array had successfully summoned the first wisp of remnant soul. Next, as long as the array continued to gather more gray aura, Yu Wei's remnant soul would be condensed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were full of anticipation as they stared intently at the array. However, as time passed, the scene in the light shield didn't change much. A full 12 hours had passed, and there was still only a wisp of gray aura in the array. Granny Long's eyes became serious, and her face was slightly pale. Her aura had obviously weakened a little. For the entire night, she had continuously activated the array. Her magic power was greatly depleted, and she was very tired. But in the end, she only managed to summon a wisp of gray aura, which was worlds apart from the result she had expected. Her exhaustion, coupled with the sense of loss, made her feel rather dejected. She persisted for another 4 hours, and was really at the end of her rope. There was still only a wisp of gray aura in the nether passage soul-sealing array. Granny Long had no choice but to temporarily give up and stop the array. Whoosh! She retracted her palms, and landed on the ground from the air. The dazzling white light shield also immediately returned to its original calm state, becoming dim and lightless. Granny Long took out 2 saint-level pills and consumed them. She silently circulated her energy to catalyze the medicinal efficacy and replenish her empty magic power. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao quickly rushed over and stood beside her, asking about the situation with concern. "Are you alright, Granny? How come there's only a wisp of soul aura? Is there a problem with the array?" Granny Long waved her hand and said, "I'm fine, don't worry. It's just that I've consumed too much magic power and need to replenish it. As for this array, I've meticulously arranged it according to the records in the ancient books. There shouldn't be any problem. There's no problem with the array, and we also have Yui's relics. But what's the problem?" Granny Long frowned and stared at the array's light shield, revealing a trace of distress and doubt. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and comforted her. "Don't worry, Granny Long. First, circulate your energy and restore your magic power as soon as possible. Then try again." Granny Long nodded and said, "That's the only way." After saying that, she sat cross-legged on the ground and circulated her energy to refine the medicinal efficacy and quickly restore her magic power. Ji Tianqing also walked to the corner of the hall and sat cross-legged. Seeing this scene, Yin Yao quickly ran over and asked in confusion, "Tianqing, what are you doing?" Chapter 1729. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Yin Yao was immediately stunned. She quickly came back to her senses and revealed an incredulous expression. "Tianqing, that's a saint-level array formation. How can you find the source of the problem?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained via voice transmission. "I vaguely remember that I've seen related records before. Perhaps I can find some clues. I'm going to meditate for a while. Help me guard." Although this matter was hard to believe, Yin Yao knew very well that Ji Tianqing was not an ordinary person. He had been constantly creating miracles. Therefore, she chose to believe in Ji Tianqing. "Okay, don't worry. I won't let anyone disturb you." After receiving Yin Yao's reply, Ji Tianqing was relieved and meditated. He controlled his essence soul to enter Qinshin's tomb. Swoosh! The essence soul golden sword turned into a small golden man and appeared in the dark and cold Qinshin's tomb. The small golden man looked exactly like Ji Tianqing and sped across the gray wasteland. After a while, he arrived in front of the 18 black tombstones. He stretched out his palm and pressed on the first tombstone on the right. Suddenly, the tombstone lit up with a hazy golden light and enveloped him. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, he entered an alternate space and appeared in the sea of clouds. He crossed the stone bridge in the sea of clouds and arrived at the door of the sacred pagoda. After pushing open the door, he entered the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion and began to quickly flip through the books and documents. There were tens of thousands of books in the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion, and everything about martial arts was covered. When Ji Tianqing was flipping through ancient books in the past, he had seen records of the Nether Passage soul-sealing array in some books. This kind of array formation was a saint-level array formation that had been passed down for thousands of years. When Ji Tianqing saw the relevant records in the past, he did not take it to heart. After all, his strength was low. Even if he read it, it was useless. It was impossible for him to set up a saint-level array formation. After a long time, he could not remember the contents clearly. Now that he had come to the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion again, his goal was very clear. He wanted to find information about the Nether Passage soul-sealing array. In just an hour, he had scanned more than 3,000 books with his divine sense, and finally found 2 relevant books. With a wave of his hand, he took the 2 ancient books from the bookshelf and carefully read them. The 2 thick ancient books had hundreds of pages and nearly 100,000 words. They recorded a lot of information related to array formations. Ji Tianqing spent an hour to find the information he wanted and memorize it. After closing the ancient books, he waved his hands and placed the 2 ancient books back on the bookshelf. Then, he walked out of the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion and left the Qinshin tomb. In the next instant, his primordial spirit returned to its original position, and he opened his eyes. The hall was quiet, and the light was dim. Granny Long was still sitting in the middle of the hall, meditating beside the light shield. Seeing that he had woken up, Yin Yao hurriedly asked via voice transmission, "Tianqing, how is it? Have you found any clues?" Ji Tianqing stood up and nodded to her. "I found it. I know what's going on." "What's the reason?" Yin Yao showed a look of expectation. Ji Tianqing pointed to the grayish-white light shield in the middle of the hall and explained, "Granny Long is right. The Nether Passage soul-sealing array and the important relics of the deceased can indeed summon the souls of the dead. Granny Long's plan is correct, and there's nothing wrong with the array formation she arranged. But this array is not complete enough. She needs to add a few seals to add the effect of summoning souls to the array formation. Moreover, there are some problems with the method Granny Long used to activate the array and summon the souls of the dead." Ji Tianqing pointed out the root of the problem and briefly explained it to Yun Yao. After hearing it, Yun Yao was shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array is a very rare and rarely used saint-level array formation. How can you know so much about it? You can even point out the flaws and problems of Granny Long? Tianqing, if this matter is spread out, the entire Luotian mountain will be in an uproar. Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand. "It doesn't matter whether it's sensational or not. Let's get down to business first." "What business?" Yin Yao raised her eyebrows in confusion. After thinking for a while, she suddenly thought of something. "Tianqing, don't tell me. You want to add seals to Granny Long's array?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "That's right." Yin Yao was even more shocked and she asked worriedly, "But that's a saint-level array formation. Can you really add seals? What if you get hurt by the power of the array formation?" Before she could finish, Ji Tianqing said confidently, "Don't worry. I'm just borrowing the power of the array formation to add seals. I don't need to be a martial sage. Moreover, as long as you understand the array well enough, you won't get hurt by the backlash." After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked to the middle of the hall. He walked a few rounds around the grayish-white light shield and used his Dharma eye to observe it for a few minutes before he started to cast his spell. He formed a spell with both hands and shot out white light. The white light formed mini arcs and formed all sorts of ancient words before he injected them into the light shield. The light shield did not block or reflect the white light. It just quietly shone with white light. Ji Tianqing's spell, the spell, and the runes merged perfectly with the light shield. Yin Yao was originally worried about Su Mo. However, when she saw this, she immediately dispelled her worries. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing finished casting his spell and successfully added 6 seals to the array formation. After he finished casting his spell, the 6 seals merged with the array formation. The grayish-white light shield immediately became bright and dazzling. It exuded a more holy and powerful aura. Yun Yao could clearly feel that the power and aura of the Underworld Passage Soul Sealing Array had undergone a qualitative change. If the array that Granny Long had set up previously was just an inanimate object, then the array formation that Granny Long had set up was just an empty shell. Now, after Ji Tianqing's modification, the array formation had become like a living creature. It was extremely agile and powerful. "This is unbelievable. Tianqing, you actually completed the saint-level array formation set up by Granny Long. This is definitely a miracle." Yin Yao stared at Ji Tianqing with sparkling eyes. She could not help but exclaim. Her eyes were filled with surprise and pride. Granny Long, who was meditating, was also awakened by the aura of the array formation. She quickly stopped casting her spell and opened her eyes to look at the array formation. When she saw that the light shield of the array formation had turned white and lit up with holy white light, her expression changed immediately. She could feel that the aura of the array formation was several times stronger than before. Her eyes widened, and her old face was filled with shock. What's going on? Who touched this array formation? Granny Long turned to look at Ji Tianxing and Yunyao and asked in a serious tone. Granny, it's like this. Yunyao quickly explained to her what had happened. After Granny Long heard everything, she was even more shocked. She stared at Ji Tianxing. Her lips trembled a few times before she exclaimed in surprise. Good. This is really good. I really did not expect that you, Tianxing, would have such incredible knowledge and skills to help me complete this saint-level array formation. You are only at the primordial soul stage, but you can complete this saint-level array formation. If I did not see it with my own eyes, who would dare to believe it? Chapter 1730. Back then on the ancient viewing platform in the Divine Ruins, Granny Long had seen how outstanding Ji Tianxing was. But at that time, she only saw Ji Tianxing's strength and vast knowledge. How monstrous was Ji Tianxing? She didn't know in her heart, and didn't have a specific idea. But after this incident, she felt it even more deeply. The Nether Passage Soul Sealing formation that she personally set up was a very rare and complicated saint-level array formation. Even she herself didn't know much about this array formation. Her understanding was not thorough enough. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, was able to add seals to the grand formation and perfect it to a near-perfect state. How could she not be horrified? Deep surprise and shock filled Granny Long's heart, making her unable to calm down for a long time. With Ji Tianxing alone, he can surpass all the young geniuses in the world. Luotian Mountain has really picked up a treasure. Granny Long's heart surged as she secretly sighed with emotion. After a long time, her emotions stabilized. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said, Tianxing, since you can perfect this array formation, it means that you know it like the back of your hand. This old one's magic power has recovered by more than half, and I'm ready to try again. Can you cooperate with this old one to activate the array formation? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, I'm happy to help. Good. There's no time to lose, let's start now. Granny Long revealed a kind smile and began to cast the spell. With her as the lead, she released a vast amount of magic power and poured it into the Nether Passage Soul Sealing formation. As the array formation was activated, the light shield lit up with an even more dazzling white light, illuminating the entire hall. Ji Tianxing only had the strength of the Essence Spirit Realm, and was not enough to activate the saint-level array formation. He could only protect Granny Long, and watch the changes of the Nether Passage Soul Sealing formation. Once there was any problem or deviation in the array, he would adjust it. Soon 15 minutes passed. The Nether Passage Soul Sealing formation was operating normally. The invisible power it released had already spread between heaven and earth, and was spreading crazily. Granny Long could clearly feel that after Ji Tianxing perfected the array, its power had increased several times, and it was easier to control. The amount of magic power she needed to control the array had been reduced by 70%. It could be said that it was a piece of cake. A short hour later, a wisp of gray aura condensed in the blazing white light shield. This gray soul aura was obviously much stronger and darker in color. The light gray soul spirit inside the light shield immediately fused with it, and became even stronger. Not long after, a third gray soul aura appeared in the light shield. Then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. As time passed, wisps of soul energy were condensed in the blazing white light shield. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yunyao were all in high spirits as they saw the hope of success. Unknowingly, another 12 hours had passed. According to the previous situation, Granny Long's magic power would be exhausted, and she would not be able to continue. But now, she only had 40% of her magic power left. She could only hold on for a few more hours. More than 20 wisps of soul energy had been condensed in the blazing white light shield. Many wisps of soul energy gathered together and condensed into a washbasin-sized gray fog that was constantly surging and churning. The gray fog had been trying to condense into a human form, but it could not do so. Granny Long knew very well that the soul energy summoned by the array was not enough to condense Yu Wei's remnant soul. She continued to operate the array to summon the remnant soul energy that was drifting between heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing also adjusted a few seals to stimulate the array's potential and make the array's power stronger. In the next 6 hours, 10 wisps of soul energy appeared in the blazing white light shield one after another. A full 18 hours passed. Granny Long's magic power was exhausted again, and she could no longer operate the array. She was forced to stop. The dazzling white light of the blazing white light shield also gradually dimmed, returning to normal and calm. At this time, the number of soul energy gathered in the light shield had reached 36 wisps. All the soul energy gathered together to form a large gray fog that was surging and twisting. Granny Long did not have time to rest. She stared at the gray fog with shining eyes, waiting for the result. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also stared at the gray fog without blinking. They prayed silently in their hearts that it would succeed. About 15 minutes later, after countless times of merging, twisting and pulling, the gray mist finally condensed into a vague figure about 7 feet tall. The gray figure was somewhat hazy, and its face could not be seen clearly. However, its body was slender, and it was obviously a woman with a strong and healthy body. Granny Long was pleasantly surprised. She exclaimed in a low voice, "It's finally done. This is great." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Without needing Granny Long to explain, the two of them knew that the hazy gray figure in the light shield was Yu Wei's remnant soul. The remnant soul did not have any self-awareness. It just floated quietly in the air like a ghost. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were looking forward to seeing how Granny Long would use the remnant soul to find the blood skull's location. Unfortunately, Granny Long's dermic power was exhausted. She had to recuperate. The two of them could only wait patiently. After a whole night, Granny Long finally finished recuperating. Her dermic power had recovered by about 80%. She took out an ancient bronze compass from her infinite space ring and placed it in front of her. When she injected her dermic power into the compass, the ancient compass suddenly emitted a golden light. It became as big as a millstone and floated in the air. The whole hall was illuminated by the golden light. Granny Long stretched out her hand and grabbed the blood-red crystal in the light shield, as well as the gray remnant soul, and put them into the compass. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light engulfed the gray remnant soul and the blood-red crystal, and it began to spin rapidly. Hundreds of ancient seal characters and symbols appeared on top of the compass, dancing in a special trajectory. Granny Long stood in the hall with a solemn expression. She made a series of hand seals with both hands, using her majestic dermic power to form various seals. After an entire hour, the ancient bronze compass finally stopped spinning, and the surging golden light also stopped. The hundreds of seal characters and symbols also stopped moving. They arranged themselves into special patterns and patterns. Granny Long stared at the patterns. After a moment of careful observation, she came to a conclusion. It's there. Those damned ghosts have already escaped from the Black Frost Empire and are trying to bring it back to the North Underworld Mountain. Granny Long muttered to herself. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at her in confusion. Granny Long, have you found the blood skull's location? It was taken away by the 10,000 skeletal demon? Where are they hiding now? They are in the Sky Wolf Mountain Range at the northern border of the Theocracy. If we go further north, we will leave the Theocracy and enter the North Underworld Mountain Range. As she spoke, Granny Long waved her hands and put away the ancient bronze compass. Chapter 1731. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao both frowned and looked serious. Grandma Long, should we chase after them now? The Sky Wolf Mountain Range is very close to the North Underworld Mountain. Even if we rush there at full speed, I'm afraid we won't make it. Both of them were worried about this, and were thinking about how to solve this problem. Grandma Long waved her hand and said earnestly, "You two don't have to participate in this matter. Just stay in the Luotian Mountain and cultivate." Ghost experts often appear at the northern border of the Divine Nation recently. It's very dangerous. I won't let you take the risk again. By the time you reach the Sky Wolf Mountain Range, the blood skulls would have been brought back to the North Underworld Mountain. That 10,000 skeleton demon is a tribulation realm expert. You won't be able to help even if you go. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were silent and didn't refute Grandma Long's words. After all, what she said was the truth. Ji Tianxing asked, Grandma Long, what's your plan? Grandma Long said seriously, I already have a plan. I'll send a few divine envoys to solve this problem. They will take the Heaven Fate ship and rush to the Sky Wolf mountain range. They should be able to rescue the Blood Skulls before the ghost race returns to the North Underworld mountain. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao nodded and agreed with her plan. After that, Granny Long gave a few words of advice to the two of them before she turned around and left the hall to assign tasks. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao stopped for a moment before leaving the underground palace. They returned to the Cloud Water Palace and entered their own secret rooms to cultivate while waiting patiently for Grandma Long's news. When the Blood Skulls were rescued and brought back to the Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianxing still had to purify the demonic aura. For the next few days, the Luotian Mountain was peaceful. Ji Tianxing had been cultivating diligently in the secret room to strengthen his martial Dao foundation and steadily increase his strength. At the same time, he was also cultivating his sword intent and working hard to make it more prominent and powerful. After 9 days and 9 nights of cultivation, his strength had increased again and was about to reach the peak of the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm. He had a strong premonition that he would be able to break through to the Tribulation realm in 2 to 3 months. At the same time, Yun Yao was also cultivating diligently in the secret room, trying her best to break through to the Tribulation stage. Even though she had already refined the Longevity Divine Pearl, and her strength had increased by 1 level, she was still a celestial immortal. However, the power and effects of the Longevity Divine Pearl were far beyond that. Boundless divine power of immortality was hidden in her body and soul, subtly transforming her and making her stronger with each passing day. She could even conclude that the power of a Longevity Divine Pearl could at least allow her to grow to the 6th or 7th level of the Tribulation realm before her power weakened. After 9 days and 9 nights of seclusion, her strength had more than tripled, allowing her to successfully reach the peak of the 9th Firmament Essence Soul realm. Right now, she was already at the perfected Primordial Spirit realm. If he took another step forward, he would be able to break through to the Crossing Calamity realm and step into an even more powerful realm. However, in order to break through to the Tribulation Passing realm, she had to trigger the Heavenly Tribulation and successfully pass it once. She hadn't sensed when the Heavenly Tribulation would come. This meant that her cultivation realm and timing weren't there yet. She still had to wait for a few more days. Half a year ago, she had read up on all the information regarding the Crossing Calamity realm and was very familiar with it. A martial artist's strength surpassed the Primordial Spirit realm. After successfully passing the Heavenly Tribulation, he would reach the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm. After reaching the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm, if the martial artist's growth was fast enough, he would trigger the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation in 200 to 300 years. If the martial artist's growth was very slow, his strength might even stagnate. After 1,000 years, the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation would definitely come. After successfully passing the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation, one would successfully reach the 2nd level of the Crossing Calamity realm and become even stronger. Those who failed to pass the Heavenly Tribulation would definitely turn into ashes and perish completely. From the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm to the 9th level of the Crossing Calamity realm, a martial artist had to go through 9 heavenly tribulations and go through 9 trials to become a martial sage. The power of the 9 heavenly tribulations would be stronger each time. The 8th and 9th heavenly tribulations were extremely terrifying and could be said to be destructive. Since ancient times, there had been countless martial artists who could reach the Crossing Calamity realm. However, there were very few martial artists who could successfully pass the 9th heavenly tribulation and break through to the martial sage realm. The ancients said that under the heavenly tribulation, less than 1 in 10 martial artists would survive. This meant that more than 90% of the Crossing Calamity realm martial artists would perish under the heavenly tribulation. Less than 1 in 10 martial artists could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. Yun Yao understood this information, so she was a little nervous and hesitant. She hoped that the heavenly tribulation would come as soon as possible, so that she could break through to the crossing calamity realm. However, she was worried that the heavenly tribulation would come too early, and she would not be prepared enough. When the time came, she would be in danger of perishing. On the morning of the 10th day, there was no morning sun in the sky, and it was a little gloomy. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao ended their seclusion and walked out of the secret room. The two of them returned to the room and asked each other about the situation. After knowing that each other's strength had increased, they were both gratified for each other. Ji Tianxing knew that Yun Yao had reached the peak of the primordial soul realm and said with a smile, "Yao Yao, I didn't expect you to reach the peak of the primordial soul realm before me. It seems that you might pass the heavenly tribulation before me. The power of the longevity divine pearl is indeed extraordinary. According to my estimation, it can help you reach the 7th or 8th tier of the crossing calamity realm in just a few years." Yun Yao held his hand and said calmly, "The longevity divine pearl is a divine item. Its power is naturally extraordinary. It's good that I passed the heavenly tribulation first. At least I can learn from it. When you pass the heavenly tribulation, you will know how to deal with it. However, the heavenly tribulation is very powerful. Less than 1 in 10 will survive. I don't know how many heavenly tribulations I can pass." Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted her. "Don't worry. You are a rare top genius in the world, and you have inherited the divine Tao inheritance of goddess Yaoguang. If even you can't pass the heavenly tribulation, can a martial sage be born on the Shenwu continent? Anyway, I am very confident in you. You will be fine." "I hope so." Yun Yao nodded and continued, "By the way, today is the 10th day. I wonder if the divine envoys have completed their mission. Let's go find Granny Long and ask about the situation." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Okay." Afterward, the two of them left the Cloud Water Palace and went to find Granny Long. The two of them arrived at Granny Long's residence and saw her in the study. They went straight to the point and asked about the situation. Granny Long put down the things in her hands and said to the two of them with a gratified expression, "You came at the right time. I just received a message from Divine Envoy due last night. They will be back soon." A few days ago, they rushed to the Celestial Wolf Mountain Range and found the Blood Skull and the 10,000 skeletal demon at the border of the Divine Nation and the North Underworld Mountain. The three divine envoys worked together and used all their means to kill the 10,000 skeletal demon and rescue the Blood Skull. They have already brought the Blood Skull back. Calculating the time, they will arrive at the Luotian Mountain at noon today. Tianxing, can't you get rid of the demonic aura for the Blood Skull? Chapter 1732. 100,000 miles away from the Luotian Mountain, there was a vast plain. The plain was rich in resources, and the scenery was pleasant. It was the most suitable place for humans to live and cultivate. In the middle of the plain, there was an ancient city that had lasted for 1,000 years. It was called Lanfeng City. There were millions of humans living in the city. The city was very prosperous and lively. In addition, there were dozens of villages and towns scattered around the Lanfeng City. There were hundreds of thousands of people in total. For 1,000 years, the Lanfeng City and many villages and towns had good weather and were very peaceful. The people lived and worked in peace. At this moment, the sun was high in the sky. However, there was no sun in the sky. It was gray and covered with a layer of dark clouds. In the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, there was an icy blue stream of light that was speeding in the direction of the Luotian Mountain. In the icy blue light, there was an exquisite and gorgeous flying boat that was 30 feet long. This was the flying treasure used by the Luotian Mountain. It was called the Heaven Fate Boat. Inside the flying boat, a middle-aged man in a purple robe was controlling the array and driving the flying boat. In the spacious and bright hall, there was an ice crystal coffin that was 15 feet long. It was flowing with colorful lights. In the ice crystal coffin, there was a blood-red skeleton lying quietly. This skeleton was more than 30 feet long and was well preserved. The skeleton was blood red and emitted a turbulent devil aura. It lay motionless in the coffin. Its body was covered with a layer of colorful flowing light. It was obviously suppressed by the array. On the left and right sides of the ice crystal coffin, there were two middle-aged men sitting cross-legged on the ground. They were quietly resting with their eyes closed. These two middle-aged men were both at the fifth and sixth stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. They had a majestic aura. However, the two of them were covered with wounds. Some of the wounds were purple-black, and there was still devil aura left. There was no doubt that they had fought fiercely and suffered serious injuries. At this time, the Heaven Fate boat was about to reach the sky above the Lanfeng city. The man in a green robe on the left opened his eyes and glanced at the ice crystal coffin. He then asked, "Divine Envoy Liu, how are your injuries?" The man in a purple robe on the right side of the coffin also opened his eyes. He sighed angrily, "Alas, the other injuries are still okay. They are mostly healed. There are only a few wounds that still have powerful devil aura that can't be removed." Divine Envoy Du, how is your recovery? Divine Envoy Du smiled bitterly and said, "I'm in the same situation as you. I can't get rid of the remaining demon qi. However, we've already reached Lanfeng City, and we'll be able to return to Luotian Mountain very soon. When the time comes, we can ask Granny Long for help. She might have a way." Divine Emissary Willow suddenly thought of something and hastily said, "By the way, Ji Tianqing said before that he can get rid of the Blood Skull's demon qi. Why don't we ask him for help? I'm sure he has a way." Divine Envoy Du was startled for a moment and said with some embarrassment, "We are all divine envoys as seniors. Isn't it a bit embarrassing to ask a junior for help?" Divine Emissary Willow waved his hand and said, "What is there to be embarrassed about?" Although Ji Tianqing was a god's disciple, he was highly regarded by Granny Long and the Lord God. In my opinion, he will be able to reach the tribulation transcending realm within 1 or 2 years at most. In 100 years, his strength may very well catch up to ours. Divine Envoy Du's face was full of astonishment, and he said in disbelief, "Divine Emissary Willow, although I admit that Ji Tianqing is very monstrous, and is the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms, your opinion of him is too high. But aren't you exaggerating a bit by giving him such a high evaluation?" No. Divine Emissary Willow hastily shook his head and explained with a smile, "This is not an exaggeration at all. Listen to my analysis." The two divine envoys were discussing Ji Tianqing's matter with a very focused look on their faces. However, neither of them noticed that the blood skull lying in the crystal coffin had suddenly changed. Wisps of mysterious black qi gushed out from its body and quietly corroded the layer of golden light barrier. Noiselessly, the golden light barrier was corroded by the black qi and gradually collapsed. The seal of the array was lifted, and the blood skull regained its ability to move. However, it was still lying in the crystal coffin without moving an inch, but a dense blood-red light gushed out from its body. The dark red light and the black qi fused together and turned into a black-robed figure in the blink of an eye. This black-robed figure was more than 10 feet tall and had an extremely tall and sturdy body. His body was covered by the black robe, and his head was also covered by a large cloak, making it impossible to see his face. Under the pitch-black cloak, only a pair of dark purple eyes could be seen. They shone with a frightening and ferocious light. Suddenly, the black-robed figure raised both of his palms and attacked the crystal coffin lid with all his might. With a loud bang, the lid of the ice crystal coffin was blown away. The huge coffin lid fiercely hit the ceiling of the main hall and exploded into countless pieces, splashing in all directions. The sudden impact created a crater in the ceiling of the main hall. The entire Heaven Fate ship shook violently and flipped in the sky. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Willow were instantly alerted. They immediately stabilized their bodies and rushed towards the crystal coffin with their swords. "Not good. It's going to escape. Stop it." The two of them held their swords and rushed towards the crystal coffin from the left and right. Before the two of them could see the situation inside the coffin, a tall black figure flew out from the coffin. Bam! Bam! 2 pitch-black palm shadows came towards them, and sent Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Willow flying. The two of them spat out blood and flew backward, crashing into the wall fiercely. Boom! Crack! The wall shattered, and two large holes appeared on the side of the Heaven Fate ship. The two divine emissaries flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. Immediately after, the tall black figure also broke through the crater in the ceiling of the main hall and pierced through the Heaven Fate ship. Swish! He flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. He waved his sleeves and attacked the two divine emissaries. The Heaven Fate ship had 3 large holes and was on the verge of losing control. The divine emissary controlling the Heaven Fate ship decisively controlled the array and kept the Heaven Fate ship. Swish! With a flash of light, the huge Heaven Fate ship shrunk thousands of times and became a palm-sized boat. The purple-robed divine emissary appeared in the sky and kept the boat in his interspatial ring. He turned his head and looked forward, and immediately saw the situation in the sky. In the sky thousands of feet above the ground, Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Willow were waving their swords and using their secret techniques to fight with the black-robed man. On the grassland under everyone's feet, there was a prosperous city with a radius of 100 miles. It was Lanfeng City. Seeing this scene, the purple-robed divine emissary's face changed and revealed a look of deep worry. He also quickly took out a treasure saber and attacked the black-robed man without any regard for his own safety. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky. Although the 3 divine emissaries had the advantage in numbers, they did their best to besiege the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man's strength was too strong and had reached the 9th stage of the tribulation passing realm. He easily withstood the attacks of the 3 divine envoys and only used a dozen moves to injure the 3 divine envoys. Chapter 1733. Bam! 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 Black light blades and palm shadows that blotted out the sky hit the 3 divine envoys one after another, causing a loud explosion. The 3 divine envoys were sent flying, their bodies splattered with blood as they let out painful cries. However, the 3 of them had strong willpower. They ignored their injuries and waved their swords at the black-robed man. During this time, the purple-robed divine envoy took the time to send a message to the Luotian mountain for help. Previously at the northern border, the 3 of them had already suffered heavy injuries when they killed the 10,000 skeletons and rescued the blood skull. Now that they had not recovered from their injuries and only retained 60% to 70% of their combat strength, how could they be a match for the black-robed man? In a short 100 breaths of time, the two sides had exchanged over 100 moves. The 3 gods' envoys were covered in wounds, and blood was dripping from their wounds. The purple-robed divine envoy's injuries were the most serious. His entire right arm had been cut off, and there was a bowl-sized bloody hole in his chest. His internal organs were clearly visible. Divine Envoy Du and Divine Envoy Lu were also very miserable. There were at least 30 wounds on their bodies. Even the top of their heads and faces had several bone-deep wounds. The 3 of them were rapidly weakening, let alone defeating the black-robed man. They could not even tie him down. As for the mysterious black-robed man, he was still unscathed and his strength was still unparalleled. The two sides temporarily stopped fighting and faced each other high in the sky. The 3 divine envoys spread out and pointed their swords at the black-robed man. They stared at him with hatred. "Damn demon, who are you? Why are you hiding in the ice crystal coffin?" Divine Envoy Du asked angrily. The black-robed man stood quietly in the sky. His entire body was shrouded in a hazy black fog, which made him seem even more mysterious and powerful. Under the black cloak, the pair of dark purple eyes flashed with a mocking sneer. Hee, there's no harm in telling you. I am Xiao Ming, one of the 36 demon monarchs ranked 5th. I hid in the ice crystal coffin to give you a surprise and give you a piece of advice. The black-robed Xiao Ming's voice was very dry and hoarse, like 2 pieces of dead wood rubbing against each other. It was extremely uncomfortable to hear. The 3 divine envoys immediately frowned. Their faces became very gloomy. 36 demon monarchs? Ranked 5th? Divine Envoy Du suddenly thought of something and asked in a deep voice. You are called Xiao Ming? What is your relationship with Xiao Yi? That's Bunjuan's elder brother. Xiaoming replied coldly. I see. Willow God emissary cursed with a heart full of hatred. You two brothers are devils who deserve to die. You deserve to be hacked into pieces. Xiaoming immediately sneered. Ha 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 ha. Cut him into pieces? What a great idea. This monarch has decided to fulfill your wish and let you taste the feeling of being cut into pieces. The purple-robed messenger was the leader of the three. He did not waste time with Xiaoming. He asked in a deep voice, What do you mean by the advice you just gave? Xiaoming looked at him coldly and said, My race has been dormant in the North Underworld Mountain for thousands of years. We are not afraid of the Luo River Divine Kingdom. We just want to preserve our strength. But now, times have changed. The pain and calamity that the Luoshui Divine Nation inflicted on our race will be returned tenfold. Go back and tell your master to stop provoking my race. Otherwise, the Luoshui Divine Nation will not be able to bear the revenge of the North Underworld Mountain. Xiaoming's tone was filled with an iron-blooded domineering aura and thick killing intent. The three divine envoys' faces were filled with anger, and their eyes were filled with rage as they opened their mouths to curse. Bastard! How audacious! You don't know life from death. How dare you threaten the Luoshui Divine Nation with just the power of the North Underworld Mountain? A mere ghost race dares to be so arrogant. Our Luoshui Divine Lord is merciful and did not kill all of you. That's why the ghost race is struggling at death's door. Since the ghost race doesn't know life from death, just wait to be razed to the ground by the Divine Nation's army. Xiaoming did not bother to refute and did not waste time with the three messengers. This monarch has delivered the message. You can all die now. As he spoke, Xiaoming raised his palms and released a bloody light that covered the sky and earth, spreading in all directions. Demonic blood purgatory. In the blink of an eye, endless bloody light enveloped a radius of 100 miles, turning the world into a sea of blood. This area was sealed, completely turning into a blood-colored world. In the sea of blood, huge waves surged to the sky. White bones floated up and down. It was as terrifying as purgatory on earth. The three messengers were drowned by the sea of blood and were suppressed by a powerful force. They struggled desperately in the sea of blood, unable to break free. The prosperous blue-rich city was also mostly submerged by the sea of blood. The towering ancient city walls collapsed and disintegrated in the sea of blood, turning into countless bricks and dregs. Rows upon rows of buildings, tall buildings, and palaces rapidly melted in the sea of blood, turning into mud and dust. Hundreds of thousands of common people were also corroded by the sea of blood. Their bodies rapidly corroded and festered, turning into white bones. Even though the common people of Blue Rich City were all martial artists, the majority had strength above the origin core realm. However, martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm were unable to resist the corrosion of the blood purgatory. Even Essence Soul realm geniuses and powerhouses could only struggle for a moment before their lives were taken, turning into white skeletons. In the entire Blue Rich City, there were only two Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses. They were precisely the city lord and a certain large family's ancestor. But these two powerhouses only had strength at the second and third level Tribulation Transcendence realm. They bitterly persisted in the sea of blood for 7 to 8 minutes before their physical bodies were destroyed. Their primordial spirits were killed by Xiaoming very quickly. In a short 7 to 8 minutes, more than half of Blue Rich City was destroyed, turning into a pile of ruins. All of the city walls and buildings turned into rubble and dregs, sinking into the sea of blood. More than 700,000 martial artists and common people were all annihilated, turning into white skeletons that piled up like a mountain. The flesh, blood, essence, and souls of these common people were all devoured by Xiaoming, greatly increasing his magic power. In the blood purgatory, blood waves surged to the sky. Dense white bones floated, terrifying to the extreme. 2 of the 3 messengers were also killed. Divine Emissary Willow was killed by Xiaoming. Before he died, he was even hacked into pieces, his physical body twisted into dregs by the devil blade. Even his essence soul was also destroyed and devoured by Xiaoming using a secret art. Divine Emissary Du also died. He was killed by Xiao Ming using a devil path secret art, body and soul annihilated. Only the purple-robed divine emissary survived. It was not that he was powerful, but that Xiao Ming spared his life and did not kill him. But he also suffered extremely cruel torture. His hands and feet were chopped off, and his essence soul was severely injured. He was already on the verge of death. Xiao Ming stood above the sea of blood and looked down at him from above. He said in a cold tone, "This lord spared your lowly life and let you go back to pass on the message. This massacre was a warning from North Underworld Mountain. If the Luoshui Divine Kingdom dared to invade North Underworld Mountain again, the next time, the ones to be slaughtered would not be just 700,000 people." Chapter 1734. On Luoshan Mountain, Grandma Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yao were waiting patiently. It was already close to noon, but the three divine envoys had yet to return. The sky outside the main hall was overcast, and a layer of haze shrouded their hearts. They had a bad premonition. After keeping silent for a long time, Yun Yao couldn't help but ask, "Grandma Long, according to the time, the three divine envoys should have returned, right? Why are they still nowhere to be seen? Could they have been delayed by something on the way?" Grandma Long had the same thoughts and worries, but she kept her composure and nodded slightly. "Perhaps. Let's wait a little longer." The main hall quietened down again. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. Suddenly, a stream of light flew from the sky and penetrated the gray clouds into the main hall. Swish! The stream of light flashed and flew to the front of Grandma Long. Grandma Long felt something and reached out to grab the spirit light in her palm. The light dispersed, and a message jade slip appeared in her palm. She frowned and used her divine senses to check the message in the jade slip. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were also awakened. They turned to look at her with a puzzled expression. When Grandma Long finished reading the contents of the jade slip, she instantly frowned, and her expression became serious and cold. "Not good. Something happened." Grandma Long yelled and kept the jade slip. She stood up and flew out of the main hall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao hurriedly followed. As they flew out, they asked, "Granny Long, what happened?" On the way back, the three divine envoys were attacked by the ghost race experts near Lanfeng City. As she spoke, Grandma Long came out of the main hall, took out a heaven fate ship, and brought them into the flying ship. She steered the flying ship and rushed to Lanfeng City as fast as a stream of light. In her anxiety, she used all her strength and pushed the speed of the heaven fate ship to the limit. It only took her 2 hours to cover the distance of 100,000 kilometers. The prowess of a martial saint expert was undoubtedly displayed. Swish! An icy blue stream of light pierced through the sky like a thunderbolt. 2 hours later, the heaven fate ship finally arrived above Lanfeng City. After Granny Long put away the flying boat, she, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yao appeared in the sky at the same time. The three of them stood high up in the sky and looked down at the scene below. Below them was a boundless plain with lush green grass. Dozens of miles away was an ancient and majestic city. However, the city that was supposed to be flourishing and prosperous had now been reduced to ruins. 80% of the cities within a radius of 100 miles had been turned into ruins. The ancient and majestic city walls, rows upon rows of buildings, and those majestic palaces were all reduced to rubble. The ground was covered with broken bricks and all kinds of messy debris. In some of the ruins piled up like mountains, some skeletons could be seen occasionally. The ground was dark red and emitted a thick smell of blood. Thick demonic qi and the pungent smell of blood still lingered in the sky within 100 miles. The sky above Lanfeng City was covered by a thick layer of blood-red clouds. Even when the wind blew, it did not disperse. What a tragic scene! In the entire Lanfeng City, only a corner, about 20% of the area was still intact. The city walls and buildings in that area were all intact. The hundreds of thousands of martial artists and commoners living in it also survived by luck. But everyone was scared silly. Terrified to the extreme, they abandoned the city and fled, scattering on the vast plain. For 1,000 years, Lanfeng City had been peaceful. Such a terrifying disaster had never happened. To those martial artists and commoners, This was a disaster they had never experienced before. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yao were stunned on the spot after seeing the scene of Lanfeng City clearly. Their faces became incomparably ugly. Damn it! We were still a step too late. Granny Long's face was livid with anger. Her eyes surged with killing intent. Ji Tianxing also revealed a murderous look. He yelled in a cold tone. Such a huge city. Nearly 1 million commoners were actually destroyed. Yun Yao was angry and puzzled. She could not help but ask, what happened here? How many powerhouses did the demon clan dispatch to cause such a tragic scene? While talking, the three of them released their divine senses to explore the ruins of Lanfeng City, hoping to find clues. Granny Long's divine sense covered a radius of 200 miles, searching for the traces of the three divine envoys. Lanfeng City was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of commoners were missing. This made her furious. But she knew that only by finding the three divine envoys as soon as possible could she know what happened. After about 100 breaths of time, her divine sense suddenly detected a familiar aura on the grassland 100 miles away from the ruins of Lanfeng City. It was a low mound covered by a lush forest. The familiar aura came from the forest. It was a little weak and flashed away. Granny Long teleported without hesitation. Swish! Her figure flickered a few times, and she came to the mound and entered the dense forest. Her divine sense spread out like mercury and enveloped the entire mound. Soon, she discovered that a purple-robed man covered in blood and wounds was hiding 300 meters below the ground. The purple-robed man was one of the divine envoys of Luotian Mountain. Surnamed Mo, Granny Long hurriedly used a secret technique and waved her palm to send a 5-colored stream of light into the depths of the ground. The 5-colored stream of light turned into a giant palm and wrapped Divine Envoy Mo, rescuing him from the ground. When Granny Long saw the condition of Divine Envoy Mo's injuries, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a chill on her back. Divine Envoy Mo was lying on the ground on the verge of death. His whole body was soaked in blood and mixed with the soil, making him look like a bloody clay figurine. His arms and legs had been chopped off, revealing the white bone stubble. His chest, back, and waist were densely covered with bloody holes, and his internal organs were flowing out. Even his cheeks and head were beyond recognition. He no longer looked like a human. It was a miracle that Divine Envoy Mo's body was still alive. Divine Envoy Mo, what happened? Who injured you like this? Granny Long stared at Divine Envoy Mo with burning eyes and asked with gritted teeth. Divine Envoy Mo was lying on the ground, twitching silently. His consciousness was blurred. When he heard Granny Long's voice, he was stunned for a moment before replying in a hoarse voice. It's the demon monarch. Xiao Ming. He lurked in Blood Skull. There was a bloody hole in his throat, and when he spoke his voice was muffled. He had to make a great effort to speak every word. Granny Long roughly understood what he meant and quickly comforted him. I understand. You don't have to worry. I'll heal you first. Chapter 1735. Granny Long was treating Divine Emissary Mo's wounds when Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao rushed over. Both of them were shocked to see Divine Emissary Mo in such a miserable state. However, they had already seen the cruelty of the devil race, so they were not surprised. Granny Long, let me treat Divine Emissary Mo. Yun Yao took the initiative to use her greenwood divine power to treat Divine Emissary Mo's wounds. The dark greenwood divine power shrouded Divine Emissary Mo and had an immediate effect. The bloodstains on Divine Emissary Mo's body quickly dissipated, and his wounds healed quickly. In just an hour, his wounds had mostly healed, and his life force had stabilized. In a hurry, this was all Yun Yao could do. Divine Emissary Mo's injuries were too serious, and he still needed more than 10 years to fully recover. Including his hands and feet, it would take at least 10 years to grow back. Seeing that Divine Emissary Mo's breath had stabilized, Granny Long asked, Divine Emissary Mo, tell us what happened. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu, where did they go? Divine Emissary Mo lay on the ground wearily and said in a low voice, We defeated the 10,000 skeleton demon at the border of the divine nation. After capturing the blood skeleton, We sealed it in the crystal coffin. The journey was safe and sound, but when we arrived near Lanfeng City, Demon Lord Xiaoming broke out of the coffin and almost destroyed the entire Heaven Fate ship. At that time, we realized that he had secretly possessed the blood skeleton when we were at the border of the divine nation. Xiaoming was too strong, and we were no match for him. We couldn't stop him. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu were killed by Xiaoming. Even half of Lanfeng City was destroyed by Xiaoming's blood purgatory sea. After listening to Divine Emissary Mo's words, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao frowned. Granny Long's face was ashen as she cursed. That bastard of the ghost race is so arrogant. He dared to hide in the crystal coffin and only attacked when we arrived at Lanfeng City. The ghost race deliberately destroyed Lanfeng City and massacred 700,000 people. This is a demonstration to us. Divine Emissary Mo's eyes were burning with rage as he said resentfully, "That's right. Xiaoming killed 2 divine envoys and left me alive. He wanted me to pass on a message. He said that this was just a warning. If Scandinavia dared to invade Dark North Mountain again, the next time, it would not be just 700,000 people who would be slaughtered." Xiaoming also said that the entire divine nations would not be able to withstand the wrath of Dark North Mountain. Grandma Long, who was already filled with anger, became even more furious after hearing Xiaoming's warning. Her entire body surged with killing intent. Damn it! To think that the Ghost Clan would be so arrogant. They really don't know what's good for them. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, and suddenly thought of something, and immediately reminded with a solemn expression. Grandma Long, since Xiaoming is so rampant, he must have something to rely on. This is no small matter. I'm afraid that the North Underworld Mountain has some kind of conspiracy. We need to think about it at length. If possible, I suggest that you report this matter to the Divine Master. Without waiting for him to finish, Grandma Long waved her hand with a firm expression and said in a resolute tone, "There's nothing to discuss. The Ghost Clan is courting death, and Scandinavia will not let them off easily. A mere Dark North Mountain, a small ghost clan, dares to talk nonsense and be so arrogant? No matter what conspiracy Dark North Mountain has, Luoshui Scandinavia is not afraid." After saying that, Grandma Long pointed to the ruins of Lanfeng City in the distance and ordered Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. "Tianqing, Yun Yao, you go to Lanfeng City first and stabilize the people. I will take Divine Emissary Mo back to Luoshan Mountain first. After settling him down, I will send someone to replace you. The most important thing now is to rebuild Lanfeng City and settle the people down, so as not to spread the news and cause panic among the people." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao cupped their hands and said yes. Then, Grandma Long left with Divine Emissary Mo and returned to Luoshan Mountain as fast as lightning. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also left the forest and flew back to Lanfeng City to calm the panicked people. The two of them stayed in Lanfeng City and used their great divine abilities to clean up the ruins of the city. Hundreds of thousands of panic cultivators and people gradually calmed down under the two's comfort. A day later, the 2 divine emissaries of Luoshan Mountain arrived with a large number of craftsmen and guards. The following reconstruction work was presided over and completed by the 2 divine emissaries. With the craftsmen of Luoshan Mountain, they would be able to rebuild Lanfeng City in the shortest time possible. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left and rushed back to Luoshan Mountain. Luoshan Mountain, in the study of Grandma Long's residence. It was late at night, and the light in the study was dim. It was pitch black outside the window. The atmosphere in the room was somewhat solemn. Grandma Long sat in front of the table with a grave expression. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood in front of her and asked her about the situation. "Grandma Long, how is Divine Emissary Mo? Where are Yu Wei's bones?" Grandma Long said expressionlessly, "Divine Emissary Mo is fine now. He entered the forbidden area in the back of the mountain to recuperate. It will be at least 10 years before he comes out. As for Yu Wei's bones, Divine Emissary Mo has already given them to me before he went into seclusion." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "In that case, I can purify the blood skull at any time and bury Yu Wei's bones." Grandma Long waved her hand and said, Don't worry about this matter. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Yin Yao glanced at her and asked, Then why are you so worried, Grandma? Is it because of the demon race? Grandma Long slightly nodded and looked at her and Ji Tianxing with deep eyes. She said in a grave tone, Tianxing, Yin Yao, although I don't know where you came from or what you have experienced in the past, I can tell that you are from the demon race. You seem to know a lot about the ghost race in the North Underworld Mountain. You even know some secrets? The corners of Ji Tianxing's mouth curled into a cold smile, and he said in a playful tone, Not only do the two of us know the ghost clan very well, we also hate them to the core, and we are absolutely irreconcilable with them. Grandma Long, if you have any doubts or concerns, you can tell us directly. If we can answer them, we will tell you the truth. Good. Grandma Long nodded and said with a solemn expression, Divine Emissary Mo means that Demon Monarch Xiaoming is very cunning and very arrogant. He obviously came prepared. However, since ancient times, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain for 10,000 years. They didn't dare to make an enemy out of the divine nations. In the past 10,000 years, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain and almost didn't dare to show their faces. However, since 1,000 years ago, the ghost race changed their low profile and dared to leave the North Underworld Mountain to confront the divine nation's armies. In recent years, the ghost race has become more and more arrogant, and their activities have become more frequent. They have frequently invaded the borders of the divine nations. Moreover, a large number of ghost race experts have sneaked into the divine nation's territories to cause trouble. Chapter 1736. Granny Long's meaning was obvious. On Xinwu continent, the three divine kingdoms had always reigned supreme. Aside from the three divine kingdoms, there were many other powers and races on the continent, and Dark North Mountain was just one of them. However, these races and powers were very weak, and they had to keep a low profile to survive. They did not dare to oppose the three divine kingdoms. For the past 10,000 years, the ghosts of Dark North Mountain had remained dormant. However, in the past 1,000 years, the ghosts had become more active, and they had become bolder and bolder. They even dared to challenge the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. In recent years, the ghost clan had become even more unscrupulous, and their actions had become even more arrogant. Large numbers of ghost powerhouses had invaded the borders and infiltrated the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, causing chaos everywhere. At this point, Xiaoming had infiltrated the vicinity of Luoshui Mountain and destroyed half of Lanfeng City, massacring 700,000 people. This was a great provocation, and the Luoshui Divine Kingdom would not let it go. However, Granny Long could not understand where the ghosts had gotten their confidence from. Were they not afraid that the Luoshui martial god would personally lead an army to flatten Dark North Mountain? Ji Tianxing understood Granny Long's doubts, and he explained without hesitation, Granny Long, this is a very simple question. In ancient times, the demons massacred the world and incurred the wrath of all races. They were besieged by various powerhouses and gods. In the end, the demons were destroyed, and many powerhouses and demon gods fell. Many races withered away, and most of the gods fell or died in battle. After the ancient war, the races that were lucky enough to survive had to recuperate. The demons could only hide in a corner, and did not dare to show their faces again, lest they be killed by the other races. Speaking up to this point, Ji Tianxing pointed to the north and sneered, Those despicable and cunning devils have holed up in the North Underworld Mountain, and changed their name to the Ghost Clan, hoping to deceive the world. After tens of thousands of years, they had become strong enough. However, they were still evil and greedy demons, and they could not restrain the bloodthirst and slaughter in their bones, which made them restless. They thought that the tens of thousands of years had erased their history, and that the various races had forgotten their sins. Thus, they began to test the waters, moving out of Dark North Mountain, and expanding into the outside world. Most importantly, they did not have a leader in the past. They did not have a martial god to oversee them, nor did they have a spiritual leader. But now, with a common leader, they had become more unified and united. Thus, their ultimate goal must be to destroy the various divine kingdoms, slaughter everyone, and occupy the entire Shimu continent. Ji Tianqing's tone was very firm, full of hatred and killing intent. Granny Long was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief, her eyes shining brightly. She had never thought that the origins of the Ghost Clan in Dark North Mountain would be so complicated. In her impression, the weak and feeble Ghost Clan actually had such great ambitions. After a long while, she came back to her senses and asked in disbelief, "Tianqing, you, how did you know about this?" Ji Tianqing explained, "Granny Long, although I can't tell you why, I can guarantee with my character that this is absolutely true. If you don't believe me, you can report everything I said to the Divine Master, without missing a single word." Granny Long was stunned for a moment before she gently shook her head. "No, of course I believe you. As a matter of fact, I do have some understanding of these ancient histories and secrets. It's just that I don't understand it as well as you do, and I don't know the ins and outs of the matter clearly." "Right. You said that the Ghost Clan of Dark North Mountain. No, the Devil Clan has a common leader? What's going on here? Aren't the supreme leaders of Dark North Mountain the great devil sages?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, "Those great devil sages can only be considered the strongest in Dark North Mountain. They are definitely not the leaders of the Devil Clan. In ancient times, the Devil Clan worshipped the Primogenita Demon God as their leader. During the Great War of the Gods, the Primogenita Demon God was annihilated by the gods of various races and fell on the battlefield. However, the Primogenita Demon God left behind a trace of its soul, and after 30,000 years, it was reborn with the help of the Devil Clan's powerhouses. Now that the Primogenita Demon God has returned to Dark North Mountain, the great Devil Sages, 36 Devil Monarchs, and countless other Devil Clan members worship it as their leader." Granny Long was stunned and said in disbelief, "The Primogenita Demon God? The primogeniture of the Devil Clan? It fell in ancient times, and after 30,000 years, it was reborn? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the Devil Clan in Dark North Mountain also has a martial god?" This news had a huge impact on Granny Long, and she was filled with anxiety. She only wanted to report this news to martial god Luo Shui immediately. Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and explained, "Granny Long, don't worry too much. The primogenitor demon god has just been reborn, and its strength is still very weak. It's impossible for it to recover to the martial god realm. However, I estimate that it has at least recovered to the crossing calamity realm, and is not far from the martial sage realm. After all, it is the primogeniture of the Devil Clan, a former god. It shouldn't take long for it to recover to the martial god realm. You still have to report this matter to the Divine Master, and let him make the decision." Granny Long was slightly relieved, and said with a worried expression, "In ancient times, when the Primogenita Demon God was at its peak, its strength definitely surpassed the martial god realm. If it recuperates in Dark North Mountain, it will probably recover to the martial god realm in 8 to 10 years. If that's the case, Dark North Mountain will have the capital to contend with the 3 divine kingdoms. No wonder Dark North Mountain is so arrogant, daring to sneak into the divine kingdoms and destroy Lanfeng City as a warning." By now, Granny Long had completely understood the situation. She knew that she was powerless to solve this matter, so she was prepared to report this information to martial god Luo Shui. "Tianqing, there's no time to lose. I'll report this to the Divine Master now. Wait here for a moment. After I'm done, I'll purify the blood skull." After saying that, Granny Long got up and left the study. She entered the secret room, and used a secret technique to report the news. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao stayed in the study and waited patiently. After an hour, Granny Long finished reporting and returned to the secret room. Ji Tianqing saw her grave expression and asked, "Granny Long, what did the Divine Master say?" "The Divine Master already knows. She has her own decision. We just have to wait for orders," Granny Long replied in a low voice. Then, she took out an ice blue box from her interspatial ring and placed it on the table in front of her. This palm-sized box was the shrunken ice crystal coffin. A blood-red skeleton lay quietly in the ice crystal coffin, looking nothing out of the ordinary. Tianqing, you can cast your technique now. Granny Long waved her hand and sent a majestic dermic power into the ice crystal coffin. Chapter 1737. Ji Tianqing reached out and opened the lid of the crystal coffin. He stood beside the crystal coffin and carefully observed the blood skeleton inside for a moment. The blood skeleton lay motionless on the ground. Its whole body flickered with a dark red light and emitted a powerful evil aura. Ji Tianqing raised his palms and silently activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. 2 beams of holy white light were released and injected into the crystal coffin. Immediately, the blood skeleton was enveloped by the holy white light. Countless streams of blood-red air gushed out of its body and quickly dissipated under the purification of the white light. The blood skeleton was originally sealed. Now that its demon aura and power were rapidly dissipating, it was immediately awakened. It struggled with all its might, and its body shook violently. Blood-red flames lit up in its sunken eye sockets. Seeing this, Granny Long was on guard. She was afraid that it would rush out of the crystal coffin and attack people. However, it turned out that she was worried for nothing. The holy white light enveloped the blood skeleton. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't break free. As time passed, more and more blood and demon aura gushed out of its body. Its power was also quickly dissipating. After a short 100 breaths, the lower half of its body changed from blood red to a normal grayish-white color. After another 15 minutes, the demon aura on its upper body completely disappeared. The scarlet flames in its eyes also extinguished. The entire blood skeleton's demon aura and blood aura had disappeared. It had become a lifeless gray skeleton. Only then did Ji Tianqing stop and withdraw the holy white light. All right, Yue Wei's body has been purified. She can be buried in peace. Hearing this, Granny Long released her divine sense and carefully examined Yue Wei's body. After confirming that the body was normal and didn't contain any demon aura, a gratified expression appeared on her face. Tianqing, your methods are indeed unimaginable. Yue Wei's body has been refined for thousands of years. The demon aura has long been deeply ingrained in it. Even I couldn't get rid of it. You actually purified Yue Wei's body in such a short time. It's simply incredible. As she spoke, Granny Long waved her hand and closed the lid of the crystal coffin. Now that I've finally completed the task given by the Divine Lord, I'll bury Yue Wei's body today. I hope she can also reincarnate smoothly. After that, Granny Long shrunk the crystal coffin countless times and put it away. 3 days later, Yue Wei's funeral was held on Luotian Mountain. Yue Wei's body was buried in the back of the mountain, in a very quiet place where no one would disturb her. Granny Long presided over the funeral, which was attended by several oracles and many disciples of God. Although the funeral was relatively simple, the atmosphere was solemn and solemn. It could be considered as an explanation and comfort for Yue Wei. After the funeral ended, the Luotian Mountain returned to its peaceful state. In the next few days, Granny Long and the oracles were busy with official business. According to the orders of the Luoshui martial god, the divine envoys had to supervise the various empires to search for traces of the demon race's activities within their borders. Once the demons were discovered, the empires could surround and kill them without asking for any reason. In addition, the various empires also followed the orders of the Luoshui martial god and sent their elite armies to the northern border. The defense of the northern border of the Divine Kingdom was getting stronger day by day, especially in the area adjacent to the North Underworld Mountain, where a tight and powerful defense line had been established. All signs indicated that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom would not compromise with the North Underworld Mountain. War might come soon. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao returned to their respective rooms and went into seclusion to cultivate. The previous events had made the two realize that the demons in the North Underworld Mountain were restless. It would not be long before the peace of the Shenwu continent was broken, and the situation would become chaotic. If chaos were to come, they would need to have enough strength to settle down, and only then would it be possible to kill the devil race. Unknowingly, half a month passed. Ji Tianqing had been in seclusion for 15 days, and his strength had finally reached the peak of the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm. Unfortunately, he could not sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and there was still a long time before he could break through to the tribulation transcendence realm. Yunyao's strength had also increased greatly, and she had reached the peak of perfection. She could already sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and it would probably arrive within a month. On the morning of the 16th day, the Black Hawk and the Golden Dragon came to the doors of the 2 secret rooms and knocked on the doors to wake up Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing. Master, Granny Long has sent someone to summon all the God Apostles to the Great Council Hall. She has something important to announce. Master Ji, Granny Long has ordered. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao heard the news, they ended their cultivation and opened their eyes. Granny Long is summoning everyone to the Great Council Hall? Is there something important? Is it related to the demons in the North Underworld Mountain? Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows in doubt, as he secretly speculated. With a heart full of doubt and anticipation, he got up and walked out of the secret room and entered the room. Yun Yao had just finished her cultivation and was about to stand up from the throne when she suddenly felt her vision blur. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. A strange feeling suddenly surged up from her abdomen, causing her face to turn pale, and she could not help but retch twice. Fortunately, the uncomfortable feeling disappeared in a flash. She immediately returned to normal. Subconsciously, she touched her aching abdomen and murmured to herself, "Strange, I've already refined the longevity divine pearl. Both my body and soul have been strengthened. Why do I feel uncomfortable all of a sudden? Could it be that the heavenly tribulation is affecting me negatively?" A tinge of doubt and worry flashed across her eyes. Ji Tianxing's voice came from outside the secret room. He was calling for her. Therefore, she suppressed the doubt in her heart and put it aside. She quickly got up and walked out of the secret room. After a while, the 2 of them left the Cloud Water Palace together and rushed to the Great Council Hall. When the 2 of them arrived at the Great Council Hall, the sun was rising and the sun was shining brightly. 2 teams of majestic guards in golden armor were lined up on the steps outside the Great Council Hall. They looked very solemn and dignified. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stepped into the Great Council Hall, they saw that the other 8 God Apostles had already arrived and were standing quietly in the Great Council Hall. On the throne in the north of the Great Council Hall, Grandma Long, who was dressed in splendid clothes, sat upright. Her face and aura were noble and dignified. As for the other God Apostles, they had already left the Luotian Mountain to deal with the affairs of the various empires. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao entered the Great Council Hall. After bowing to Grandma Long, they stood on the left and right sides of the Great Council Hall, facing each other. When Grandma Long saw that everyone was present, she said in a solemn tone, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce an important news. As early as half a month ago, I received news that the Heaven Extinction God Nation had already sent an envoy to the Luotian Mountain. Just now, the envoy from the Heaven Extinction God Nation sent a message saying that they are about to arrive at the Luotian Mountain. I don't know why the Heaven Extinction God Nation suddenly sent an envoy to visit." Chapter 1738. Among the 3 divine nations, Tianju Divine Nation was the most powerful. This was something that everyone knew. All the disciples of God in the hall knew this very well. The relationship between Luoshui Divine Nation and Tianju Divine Nation wasn't close, but they weren't hostile either. Tianju Divine Nation had sent a delegation to visit Luotian Mountain. This was an exchange between the 2 divine nations, sacred and solemn. Luoshui Divine Nation had to treat it with caution. Granny Long had gathered everyone to announce this news, to let everyone know the importance of this matter, to prevent any mistakes. Granny Long had already given the order to the guards and maids of Luotian Mountain. At this moment, the guards were already dressed majestically, setting up a ceremonial array at the peak of the mountain. The maids had also prepared flower baskets and musical instruments to welcome the arrival of Tianju Divine Nation's delegation. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and the rest waited in the hall for an hour. At this moment, a colorful streamer appeared in the sky, flying over from the horizon as fast as lightning. Following that dazzling streamer, there was a majestic aura that swept over from the sky. The guards on the peak of Luotian Mountain were immediately alarmed, and they all turned to look at the sky. A flying boat that was hundreds of meters long was wrapped in the colorful flowing light. The flying boat was gilded with gold, and it looked like a lifelike dragon, looking very sacred and noble. On the left and right sides of the dragon-shaped flying boat, there were two mysterious emblems, which was the symbol of Tianju Divine Nation. The guards of Luotian Mountain immediately understood that it was Tianju Divine Nation's flying boat. A guard captain quickly ran into the meeting hall to report the news to Granny Long. Reporting to Granny Long, Tianju Divine Nation's delegation has arrived. Granny Long also noticed the movement in the sky and felt a powerful aura. She immediately stood up and ordered the god's disciples, "Everyone, follow me to welcome the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation's diplomatic mission." After saying that, she led the 10 god disciples out of the hall and came to the square outside the hall. Everyone came out of the hall and stood in the spacious square. At the same time, Tianju Divine Nation's flying boat arrived above Luotian Mountain and slowly descended. When they got closer, everyone could clearly see the style of the flying boat and the emblem of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. When the flying boat descended to a height of 1,000 feet above the ground, it was put away with a flash of brilliance. Then 4 powerhouses with different figures appeared. The leader was a tall and sturdy old man with white hair and beard. This old man was at the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. He wore a dark golden robe, and his thin face had a dignified and cold temperament. Following closely behind him was a young man in his 30s. He was only at the 7th level of the Essence Spirit realm. The young man was dressed in a blue robe. He was tall and straight, and there was a hint of arrogance between his eyebrows. Apart from the old man and the young man, the other 2 were middle-aged experts in the Crossing Calamity realm. They wore black armor, and were obviously the accompanying guards. Seeing this, Granny Long and the rest of the god's disciples were stunned. Then, a weird expression appeared on their faces. "This is the diplomatic mission of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation? Why do I feel like something is wrong? Why are there only 4 people in a diplomatic mission? And 2 of them are guards? The Heaven Extinction Divine Nation only sent 2 people, 1 old and 1 young, to visit the Luotian Mountain. Isn't this too sloppy? How dare they call it a diplomatic mission with just 2 people?" The god's disciples were discussing secretly as they sized up the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. After a while, the 4 emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation landed in the square outside the hall. Hundreds of guards and maidservants stood in the square, forming a straight path in the middle to welcome the arrival of the 4 emissaries. The guards held swords and spears as they bowed in unison. The maidservants played musical instruments and scattered colorful flowers with baskets of flowers. The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man walked across the square calmly and came before Granny Long. Although Granny Long was a little worried, she did not show it. She looked at them solemnly and bowed. "The Luotian Mountain welcomes the emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation." The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man bowed in return and said calmly, "The second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain, Bai Qing, is here with God's disciple Meng Fei." Hearing this, everyone knew the identity of the white-haired old man. He was the second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. As for the blue-robed young man, he was one of the god's disciples of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at each other and saw the doubts in each other's eyes. Yi Qingluo and Lu Xiaoming looked at each other and could not help but discuss with each other. "The people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation are too insincere, right? They said they would send a diplomatic mission, but there are only 2 of them. Moreover, they are not Guardian Yen of the Heaven Extinction Mountain, nor the number 1 god's disciple, Huang Qi." Yi Qingluo said as she curled her lips. Lu Xiaoming nodded in agreement and said, "In my opinion, the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation is looking down on us. They did not take this matter to heart, and just found 2 people to deal with it." I don't know what these two fellows want to do by coming all the way to the Luotian mountain in the name of a diplomatic mission. Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes and asked on a whim, Xiaoming, do you think these two are here to propose marriage? For example, that Meng Fei, he has taken a fancy to a female disciple of our Luotian mountain, so he specially came. Cough cough. Lu Xiaoming was stunned and almost choked on her saliva. Senior sister Qingluo, why did the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation come to our Luotian Divine Nation to propose marriage? Is there something wrong with his brain? Besides, the only female disciples who participated in the Divine Kingdom exchange were you, me, and eldest senior sister. Senior sister already has a husband, and only you and I are not married yet. Who do you think Meng Fei will take a fancy to? Yi Qingluo revealed a mischievous smile and quietly extended a finger, pointing at Lu Xiaoming. Lu Xiaoming was embarrassed and her cheeks turned red. She spat and ignored Yi Qingluo. At this time, Granny Long and Bai Qing finished their small talk and led Bai Qing and Meng Fei to the conference hall. The two accompanying black-armored guards remained outside the door of the conference hall. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the rest of the god's disciples followed them into the conference hall. Soon, Bai Qing and Granny Long took their seats in the conference hall. Granny Long sat on the main seat in the north, and Bai Qing sat on the main seat on the left. Meng Fei stood behind him. As for Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the rest, they stood in 2 rows in the conference hall. After both parties sat down, Granny Long asked directly, Guardian Bai, the two of you came all the way to the Luotian mountain with great effort. I guess you must have a heavy responsibility, right? Granny Long's words sounded polite on the surface, but in fact they were sarcastic. Chapter 1739. Bai Qing didn't seem to understand the meaning of Granny Long's words. Her face was still calm. He lifted his chin slightly and said solemnly, Grandma Long is right. I've been ordered to come here for a very important matter. Grandma Long raised her eyebrows and looked at Bai Qing meaningfully. Oh, what is it? Protector Bai, please speak your mind. Please listen to me slowly. Bai Qing picked up the teacup and took a sip of the spiritual tea. Only then did she explain slowly. A few months ago, our country's patrol team discovered traces of a divine beast outside the border and reported the news to the Heaven Extremes Mountain. Tianju Mountain sent experts and guards to investigate and found the trace of the divine beast, the glazed fire dragon. As everyone knows, the glazed fire dragon is an ancient divine beast, an extremely noble and rare divine dragon. Since ancient times, the dragon tribe has been extinct. There are less than 5 divine dragons left in the world. The experts and guards of the Heaven End Mountain quietly followed the glazed fire dragon and finally found its lair, which was in the vast ruins of God. Hearing this, Granny Long and the rest of the god's disciples were all shocked. They could not believe that there was a divine dragon in the ruins of God, and it was a rare glazed fire dragon. Grandma Long could not help but ask, Guardian Bai, where is the nest of the glazed fire dragon? What happened after that? Did you succeed? Protector Bai smiled bitterly and shook his head. The nest of the glazed fiery dragon is in the famous Fiery Mountain. That area was a sea of fire with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. No one could enter it. The experts and guards of Tianju Mountain risked their lives to enter the flaming mountain, but they did not find the glazed fire dragon. Instead, they suffered heavy casualties. However, before they left, they found a piece of heavenly fire glazed gold in the underground mine of the flaming mountain. After that, Bai Qing took out a square sandalwood box from his space ring and placed it on the table in front of him. The box was exquisite and beautiful, revealing a luxurious and precious aura. In addition, there was a violent and hot aura hidden in the box, as if it could explode at any time. Everyone looked at the sandalwood box and started to discuss as they looked at it carefully. Heavenly fire-colored glazed true gold? I've heard of this treasure before. It seems to be a top-notch gem that can only be found once in 1,000 years. Yes, this kind of rare gem can be used to forge and refine saint-level magic treasures. It's definitely a rare treasure. What are the people of the Heavenly Extreme Mountain doing with the heavenly flame-colored glazed true gold. Bai Qing saw that everyone was interested, and he couldn't help but smile. He stroked his beard and said, "Granny Long, this seat wants to give this piece of heavenfire-colored glass true gold as a gift to Luotian Mountain. This is the goodwill of the Heaven Extreme Mountain, and it also represents the intentions of the Heaven Extreme God Lord. I hope that Granny Long can kindly accept it." After saying that, Bai Qing beckoned to Meng Fei, who was behind her. Meng Fei immediately understood what he meant. He held the sandalwood box with both hands and walked in front of Granny Long, respectfully presenting it to her. All the god's disciples were stunned. Obviously, they did not expect this to happen. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were also surprised and frowned. Granny Long also had the same doubts. She frowned on the spot and said with a serious face, "Guardian Bai, as the saying goes, one should not accept a reward without any effort. Our Luotian Mountain will not accept gifts casually. Moreover, this piece of heavenfire-colored glass true gold is a top-notch crafting material and a precious gem. Please take it back." However, Bai Qing shook her head and said with a smile, "Granny Long, this is a sincere gift from the Tianju Mountain. Please accept it." Granny Long saw that he insisted on giving the gift and guessed his intention. She couldn't help but smile and ask, "Guardian Bai, I'm afraid that you didn't come all the way to Luotian Mountain just to give the gift, right? There are other things, please tell me clearly. Otherwise I won't accept it." Bai Qing was a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he said with a smile, "As expected, nothing can be hidden from Granny Long's sharp eyes. Then I'll say it directly. This piece of heavenfire-colored glass true gold is indeed a gift from the Heaven Extreme Mountain to Luotian Mountain. However, we have a presumptuous request. We hope that Luotian Mountain can help us." Hearing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing, and the others all had the same thought. As expected, Bai Qing has long planned this. Haha, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. This Bai Qing won't be easy to deal with. Granny Long looked at Bai Qing calmly and asked, "How does the Heaven Extreme Mountain need help?" "Very simple." Bai Qing smiled and said in a relaxed tone, "I've long heard that 1,000 years ago, God Lord Luotian had personally crafted a divine tool called Reverse Water. That divine tool contains the ultimate power of ice and water. It can extinguish 9 heavens' true fire and compete with the sun and moon. Therefore, the Heaven Extreme Mountain wants to borrow this divine tool from your country to suppress the boundless sea of fire in Flame Mountain and deal with the glass fire dragon." Before Bai Qing could finish her words, Granny Long's expression changed and she frowned. "Protector Bai, after God Lord Luotian crafted the reverse water sword, he has never used it in front of anyone. How does your country know about it so clearly?" It seems that Protector Bai has done his homework before coming. Bai Qing saw Granny Long's attitude and said, "Granny Long must be joking. God Lord Luotian is famous throughout the world, and the reverse water sword that he personally crafted is even more well known. Granny Long, please be at ease. The Heaven Extreme Mountain only wants to borrow the reverse water sword. After we attack Flame Mountain and capture the glass fire dragon, we will definitely return the reverse water sword and also give you a great reward." Before he could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, "There's no need to mention a great reward. The reverse water sword is a divine tool that the God Lord always carries with him. He will not easily show it to others, much less lend it to others. Furthermore, this old woman cannot make the decision. Please take back the gift." Meng Fei had been holding the treasure box in front of Granny Long, unable to advance or retreat. Seeing Granny Long refuse, he turned to look at Bai Qing. Bai Qing also frowned and said unhappily, "Granny Long, our Heaven Extreme Divine Nation has always been on good terms with your country. We can be considered old friends. Even if there are disputes on the border between our two countries and some medicine mountains and mineral veins, we have always followed the principle of peace and negotiated with your country. But now that we have a problem and want to borrow a magic treasure from your country, you simply refused. Isn't that a bit too unreasonable? It's fine if you don't accept the gift, but you should ask God Lord Luotian about borrowing the reverse water sword. Granny Long also frowned and looked at him. She said in a serious tone, Protector by what do you mean? Chapter 1740. Granny Long's tone was low and cold, with a hint of anger. Bai Qing did not care. He smiled and waved his hand. Granny Long, you worry too much. Our Heaven's End holy nation is the head of the 3 holy nations, and we have always respected others. If people respect us, we will respect them tenfold. This is the principle of our nation. However, since your country is so heartless, I will definitely report this matter to God Lord Tianju without changing a single detail. As for what happens in the future, it's not something we can control. After he finished speaking, he leaned back on the wide chair and picked up the teacup to savor the tea. Even though he didn't say anything further, his expression was filled with a wisp of arrogance, and he seemed rather confident. Obviously, he knew that Granny Long would not dare to make a decision on her own, much less offend the Heaven's End holy nation. Meng Fei also held the sandalwood box with the heavenly fire glazed true gold, and returned to Bai Qing's side calmly. Granny Long's eyes were gloomy. Her expression was cold as she pondered, weighing the pros and cons. Everyone was silent, and the hall fell into silence. Bai Qing put on an attitude that said, I'm not afraid of you not knowing what's good for you. Meng Fei was also a little overbearing and secretly proud of himself. Especially when he saw the ugly expressions of the god's disciples in the hall, he was even more proud. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Ji Tianxing. His body stiffened, and the smile on his face disappeared. You, aren't you Ji Tianxing? Meng Fei's pupil shrank, and his face was full of disbelief as he exclaimed. The silence in the hall was broken, and everyone turned to look at Meng Fei. Bai Qing, who was resting with his eyes closed, was also awakened by Meng Fei's words. He frowned in confusion. What Ji Tianxing? Meng Fei, don't talk nonsense. Bai Qing was waiting for Granny Long to submit. When he saw Meng Fei speak, he scolded him in a low voice. Meng Fei was too shocked and could not help but explain. Second guardian, he is Ji Tianxing, the #1 genius with the most dazzling performance in the Holy Nation Exchange. What? Bai Qing came to a sudden realization, and suddenly revealed a face full of surprise. But I heard that he's the #1 genius of the vast divine nation. Why would he be here? Disciple doesn't know either. Meng Fei was startled for a moment. Then, he shook his head in confusion. When he came to his senses, he frowned at Ji Tianxing and asked, Ji Tianxing, why are you here instead of in the vast divine kingdom? Could it be that you betrayed the vast god nation and joined the Luo River god nation for Yin Yao? Meng Fei's words angered all the disciples of God present, and they glared at him, as if they had a common enemy. Ji Tianxing walked out of the crowd and stood in the middle of the hall. He looked at him with a cold smile and said, Little brother, please think before you speak. Firstly, even Huang Qi has to call me senior brother Ji. What right do you have to call me by my name? Secondly, I left the vast divine kingdom to reunite with my wife Yin Yao with the consent of the vast divine martial god and the Luo River martial god. This can't be considered a betrayal. Lastly, if you speak rudely again, I don't mind throwing you out. Meng Fei was stunned by this series of words. He stared at Ji Tianxing with his mouth agape. When he came to his senses, he was embarrassed and angry. He shouted angrily, Ji Tianxing, I only asked a few questions out of concern. How dare you be so rude? Is this how you're raised? Is this how the Luo River god nation treats its guests? Haha. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, You don't deserve to talk to me about manners, and you don't deserve to talk about hospitality. This is because you're not a guest in my eyes. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and a dazzling golden light turned into a giant palm that wrapped around Meng Fei. Before Meng Fei could react, he was caught by the golden palm and thrown to the entrance of the hall by Ji Tianxing. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall. He drew an arc in the air and crashed into the square outside the hall. The guards and maids in the square all stared at Meng Fei dumbfounded. Meng Fei crawled up in a sorry state. When he saw the strange expressions and gazes of the crowd, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to kill someone. Originally, when he and Bai Qing came to visit the Luoshan mountain, it could be said that they were full of themselves and wanted to show off. However, not long after he entered the hall, he was thrown out of the hall by Ji Tianxing because he said 2 wrong words. This was simply too embarrassing. He had never been so humiliated in his life. Until now, he still didn't dare to believe that Ji Tianxing had the guts to attack him in public. Ji Tianxing was so arrogant. Wasn't he afraid of angering the Heaven and God Nation and bringing disaster to the Luo River God Nation? For a moment, Meng Fei was stunned in the square, not knowing what to do. It was impossible to return to the hall. He couldn't afford to lose face. It was also unrealistic to leave just like that. Bai Qing was still in the hall, waiting to talk business with Granny Long. The great conference hall was still quiet. Everyone was shocked and looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Granny Long and the god's disciples didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be so domineering and throw Meng Fei out of the hall. However, the god's disciples came back to their senses and applauded secretly. They felt that it was very satisfying. Bai Qing was also stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Originally, he was confident that he would win and take the initiative in the negotiation. He was determined to get the reverse water divine sword. However, he didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be so arrogant. He didn't play by the rules and humiliated Meng Fei in front of everyone. As a result, when Ji Tianxing attacked, Bai Qing didn't even react in time. He looked down on the people of Luoshui Holy Nation from the bottom of his heart. He thought that the people of Luoshui Holy Nation didn't have the guts to resist, let alone offend the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation. However, Ji Tianxing's actions gave him a loud slap in the face. Swoosh! Bai Qing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up with a pale face and stared at Ji Tianxing angrily. Granny Long, is this how the Luoshui Holy Nation treats its guests? Does your nation not discipline such an arrogant and rude god's disciple? I'll remember how your god's disciple humiliated my god's disciple. Granny Long, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't let this matter go. The reason why Bai Qing was angry was that Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall, which made him lose face. However, the main reason was that he wanted to use this incident to put pressure on Granny Long. However, Granny Long looked up and said expressionlessly, Guardian Bai, please calm down. The conflict between the 2 gods' disciples is a personal grudge between the younger generation. As elders, how can we lower ourselves to the same level as them? If the news gets out, we will be ridiculed by the world. Chapter 1741. Protector Bai's thoughts have nothing to do with me. Granny Long turned a blind eye to Bai Qing's anger and replied indifferently. Bai Qing became more and more furious. He felt that he had lost all his face and could not stay any longer. Granny Long, I came here with good intentions to offer you a gift and discuss the matter of borrowing the treasure. I did not expect you to have such an attitude. I will ask you one last time. Will you lend me the reverse water sword or not? Although Bai Qing was furious, he did not lose his head. He still looked at the big picture and thought about the reverse water sword. Granny Long shook her head and said calmly, Protector Bai, I said just now that the reverse water sword is a divine weapon. How can it be lent to others so easily? I cannot make the decision. If your country is sincere, why don't you let martial god Tianju go to the Luoshui Divine Lord personally? The meaning of these words was clear. She did not want to lend it to him. Bai Qing had nothing to say. He said with a cold expression, Fine. Since your country is so unreasonable and does not care about the friendship between our countries, I have nothing to say. I will report today's matter to the Divine Lord in detail. Without waiting for him to finish, Granny Long said expressionlessly, Take care, Protector Bai. My legs are inconvenient, so I won't see you off. You. Bai Qing was even more furious. She was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. Granny Long was a martial saint expert. She was fine and welcoming the diplomatic group at the square. Now, she said that her legs were inconvenient. She did not want to see them off. and did not even bother with the basic etiquette. Bai Qing was so humiliated that he almost vomited blood. He left with a belly full of anger. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, he left the main hall with an ashen face, and came to the square. Meng Fei quickly came forward and asked with a gloomy expression, "Second Protector, what should we do next?" Before he could finish, Bai Qing shouted coldly, "Let's go!" Then, Bai Qing took out a flying boat, and quickly left Luotian Mountain with Meng Fei and 2 black armored guards. After a long time, Bai Qing and Meng Fei's anger gradually subsided, and they calmed down. Meng Fei touched his robe and looked around. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression changed. "Oh no!" Bai Qing sat across from him. Seeing his strange expression, she asked with a sullen face, "Meng Fei? What's wrong?" "Second Guardian, Meng Fei hesitated for a moment before he said with a heart full of apprehension, "When I was thrown out of the main hall by Ji Tianxing just now, the treasure box was left in the main hall." "What?" Bai Qing's eyes widened in anger, and his anger exploded once again. "You idiot! If you can't even guard a treasure box, what use do I have for you?" Not only did we not manage to borrow the reverse water sword, we even left the Heavenfire glazed true gold at the Luotian Mountain. "I'm so angry." Meng Fei shrank his neck after being scolded. After a while, he mustered up his courage and tried to say, "Second Protector, why don't we go back and get it?" Bai Qing glared at him coldly and scolded, "Do you have a pig's brain?" They had already flown so far, and now they were running back to get the treasure box? "You can be shameless, but I can't afford to lose face like that." Meng Fei was scolded until he was speechless. He could only obediently shut his mouth and lower his head in a repentant posture. Bai Qing was silent for a moment before his anger subsided. He muttered in a cold voice, "The Luotian divine nation is really getting more and more outrageous. They actually dare to openly go against my country. Since that's the case, then don't blame my country for being ruthless. We'll wait and see in the future." Meng Fei also secretly clenched his fists. He recalled Ji Tianxing's words in his mind, and his eyes flashed with a thick sense of hatred. Luotian Mountain Conference Hall. Ever since Bai Qing and the others left, the originally silent hall immediately became lively. Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zobin all gathered around Ji Tianxing's side, discussing excitedly. "Eldest senior brother, that move of yours just now was simply too shocking. All of us were dumbfounded. Haha. Everyone has long disliked that Bai Qing and Meng Fei. They came to the Luotian Mountain to show off their strength. Eldest senior brother is really ruthless. He threw that kid out in front of everyone. That's such a slap in the face. It's not just us who didn't expect this. That kid, and Bai Qing definitely didn't expect eldest senior brother to be so decisive. He's so domineering." A few God's disciples were talking about what happened just now. They were all exultant, supporting and admiring Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. At this moment, Granny Long walked into the hall and stood in front of everyone. Her face was a little solemn, and there was a worried look on her face. A few God's disciples immediately quietened down and kept silent. Before Granny Long could speak, Yin Yao defended Ji Tianxing. "Granny Long, you can't blame Tianxing for what happened just now. It was Meng Fei who spoke rudely first. Tianxing warned him." Obviously, Yin Yao knew that today's negotiation had failed. She was worried that Granny Long would blame Ji Tianxing. However, before she could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, "Yin Yao, you don't have to defend Tianxing. I know very well that I don't mean to blame Tianxing. Everyone don't worry. No matter how strong the Luoshui holy nation is, we will never punish our own disciples and people just to please an external enemy." After hearing Granny Long's words, Yin Yao was relieved. The God's disciples also felt warm and proud. Ji Tianxing looked at Granny Long and analyzed seriously. "Granny Long, the people from the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation came with ill intentions. They didn't take the Luoshui holy nation seriously from the beginning. Moreover, Bai Qing and Meng Fei were arrogant, which made people feel disgusted. The Heaven Extinction Holy Nation only sent Bai Qing and Meng Fei, with a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. They want to borrow the reverse water divine sword? I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple. I'm afraid that the heaven extinction holy nation has other plans. Granny Long nodded in agreement and said seriously, "That's right. Tianqing, your analysis is completely correct. It's just a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. Although it's a top-notch gem material, it can't be compared to the reverse water divine sword. I'm just worried that the heaven extinction holy nation's intention to borrow the reverse water divine sword is fake. Their real intention is to find an excuse to provoke a dispute between the two nations and snatch the resources and treasures. Previously, the North Underworld Mountain invaded the Holy Nation and caused chaos in the Holy Nation, killing the people. Now the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation is here to provoke us. The Holy Nation is in a state of internal and external troubles. I'm afraid that a storm is coming." At this moment, Lu Xiaoming suddenly realized something and exclaimed, Bai Qing, that old man didn't take the treasure box away?" Everyone turned to look at her and saw that she was picking up a sandalwood treasure box from the ground. The treasure box contained the heavenly flame glazed true gold. Lu Xiaoming held the sandalwood treasure box with both hands and presented it to Granny Long. Granny Long thought for a while and waved her hand. "Tianqing, ever since you came to the Luotian Mountain, I haven't rewarded you with any resources or treasures." Chapter 1742. The heavenly flame glazed true gold was a top-notch crafting material that could be used to craft sacred-level magic treasures. Even to the Luotian Mountain, it was a rare treasure. However, the Luotian Mountain did not lack this material at the moment. Hence, Granny Long gave it to Ji Tianqing as a gift. Of course, Ji Tianqing wouldn't refuse. He accepted the gift as a matter of course. "Thank you, Granny Long. It would be impolite of me to decline." As he spoke, he took the sandalwood box and put it into his space ring. At the same time, Burial of Heaven reminded him in his mind, "I didn't expect the Heaven and God Nation to send a heavenly flame glazed true gold over. With the heavenly flame glazed true gold and the other three materials, I will be able to repair the sword." There was no doubt that Burial of Heaven had told Ji Tianqing about the materials needed to repair the sword a year ago. It was a pity that Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for the past year and did not have the chance to explore and search for crafting materials. Hence, the matter of repairing the sword of Burial of Heaven had been put on hold again and again, and he had not collected the materials yet. When Bai Qing took out the heavenly flame glazed true gold, Burial of Heaven reminded Ji Tianqing again. Ji Tianqing was still thinking about how to get the heavenly flame glazed true gold. However, what happened later was beyond everyone's expectations. He did not expect to get the materials in such a way. At this time, Granny Long said to everyone, "Everyone, today's matter ends here. You can leave now. Also, everyone must keep this matter a secret. Do not spread it out." The god's disciples bowed and said yes, before leaving the conference hall one after another. After a while, only Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Granny Long were left in the meeting hall. When Ji Tianqing saw that everyone had left, he could not help but ask, "Granny Long, is the flaming mountain and the glazed fire dragon that Bai Qing mentioned true?" Granny Long nodded solemnly and said, "That's true. The flaming mountain was located in the ruins of God. The ruins of God was the intersection of the three divine kingdoms, and did not belong to any of them. As early as 10,000 years ago, the Mountain of Flames had always existed. It was extremely dangerous there, regardless of whether one was a cross-calamity realm or a martial sage. One could lose his life if he barged into the Flame Mountain. However, the Flaming Mountain was vast, and there were endless mineral veins hidden underground. After being refined by the colored glass heavenly flame, those mineral veins have long become incomparably pure, and who knows how many precious gems and ores have been born." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes revealed a hint of anticipation. He had plans to repair the sword of Burial of Heaven, so he was particularly interested in ores. Granny Long frowned as she recalled, then continued, "As for that glazed fire dragon, It appeared 3,000 years ago. At that time, a group of adventurers from the ruins of God did their best to capture the glazed fire dragon after discovering it. In the end, dozens of adventurers joined forces to besiege the glazed fire dragon, but they could not do anything to it. Instead, they were all killed. Since then, the glazed fire dragon had disappeared. Many powerhouses rushed to search for it, but they could not find it. Until 2,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again. Many of the Empire's forces and adventurer team's experts heard the news and rushed to capture it. However, the glazed fire dragon killed countless powerhouses and successfully escaped back to the Flaming Mountain. 1,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again, and once again, it caused a bloodbath and then hid in the Flaming Mountain. After listening to Granny Long's narration, Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "In that case, the glazed fire dragon's nest is the Flaming Mountain, and it appears once every 1,000 years. That's right." Granny Long nodded. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly as he pondered, then continued to ask, "The glazed fire dragon has appeared 3 times, and even though it was surrounded by countless powerhouses, it was not captured. In addition to the Flaming Mountain, it must be very powerful, right?" Granny Long thought for a moment and nodded. It is said that when the glazed fire dragon appeared 1,000 years ago, it had already passed the 8th tribulation. With its talent and aptitude, it must have passed the 9th tribulation and reached the martial sage realm by now. Ji Tianqing frowned. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Granny Long, can the reverse water divine sword really suppress the Flaming Mountain and restrain the glazed fire dragon?" Granny Long did not hesitate and said in a firm tone, "Of course." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and showed a touch of doubt. Then why didn't the Luoshui martial god take action to subdue the glazed fire dragon? Granny Long was stunned for a moment. Then she shook her head and said with a smile, "Tianqing, water and fire are incompatible. No matter how noble the glazed fire dragon is, it is incompatible with the Divine Master's aura. The Divine Master will not like it." Ji Tianqing muttered in his heart, "The glazed fire dragon that all the experts in the world dream of. But the Luoshui martial god is indifferent because he doesn't like it. What a casual reason." Granny Long looked at him and asked in a low voice, "Tianqing, you are so concerned about the glazed fire dragon. Don't tell me, you want to capture it?" Yun Yao also saw the clues and guessed his thoughts. Ji Tianqing did not hide and nodded. "Granny Long, the people of the Heaven End Divine Nation want it but can't get it. We have the reverse water divine sword, why not give it a try? If we can capture the glazed fire dragon, the power of the Luoshui divine nation will be greatly improved." Granny Long smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Tianqing, countless experts have tried their best and failed to subdue the glazed fire dragon. This matter is not that simple." "Okay." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Then, even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can enter the blazing mountain and mine the underground or veins and gems. It will be a great harvest." This, Granny Long hesitated, frowning and thinking. Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked secretly, "Tianqing, why do you want to go to the blazing mountain so much? Are you interested in the glazed fire dragon? Or are you looking for ore veins and materials?" Others did not know, but Yun Yao knew very well that Ji Tianqing had a black dragon and an unrepaired divine sword. She guessed that Ji Tianqing was not interested in the glazed fire dragon. It was more likely that he wanted to find ore veins and materials. "Sure enough," Ji Tianqing replied, "I am preparing to repair the Burial of Heaven sword. Currently, I only have the heavenly flame glazed true gold. I am still missing a few ores and materials. I am going to the blazing mountain to try my luck. As for the glazed fire dragon, it would be best if we can capture it. Even if we can't, we won't lose anything." Yun Yao nodded to show that she understood. Seeing that Granny Long was still considering, she said, "Granny Long, I agree with Tianqing's suggestion. The glazed fire dragon is an item without an owner, and the blazing mountain is also in the ruins of God. It is not under the jurisdiction of the 3 divine nations. We have the reverse water divine sword, so we can give it a try. Even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can get a lot of ore veins and gems. Chapter 1743. Yun Yao's words interrupted Grandma Long's train of thought. She came back to her senses and looked at Yun Yao with a complicated gaze. She sighed. Sigh. The flaming mountain is extremely dangerous. The glazed fire dragon is also a noble and powerful divine beast that cannot be tamed. Why do you want to take the risk? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long with a firm gaze and said calmly, Grandma Long, we know what you said. We will be careful. Moreover, a martial artist's cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. Over the years, the two of us have gone through so many hardships and endured so many life and death crises. Because of this, we were able to grow so quickly and become the favored ones of the heavens. Grandma Long saw that Yun Yao's attitude was firm, and her words were reasonable, so she temporarily relented. Fine. Since you insist on going, this old one won't stop you. As for the water reverse divine sword, Yun Yao will follow me to the secret chamber and report to the divine master personally. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, the divine master has mentioned to me before that he has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to you. However, your strength is not enough, and the time is not ripe, so this matter has been put on hold. Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing were startled when they heard the news. They were in disbelief. What? The Divine Master has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to me? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long in disbelief. Grandma Long nodded and said, Yes. With the Divine Master's strength and means, there is basically no need for him to use the water reverse divine sword. You are the Divine Master's most valued disciple, and the only divine lady. Of course, he will bestow the divine sword to you. Yun Yao came back to her senses and said with a gratified expression, If that's the case, then it will be easy. Grandma Long, let's go to the secret chamber and report to the Divine Master. Grandma Long couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw how scheming she was. Sigh, you are usually calm and wise, but when it comes to Tianxing, you can't keep your cool. Yun Yao just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After that, Granny Long left the main hall with Yun Yao and went to the secret chamber. Ji Tianxing also left the meeting hall and returned to Cloudwater Palace. While waiting for Yun Yao to return, he took out the sandalwood box from his spatial ring. He placed the sandalwood box on the table and slowly opened it. Shwa! A dazzling red light immediately blossomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire room with a red glow. Ji Tianxing looked down and saw a fist-sized fiery red crystal lying quietly in the box. This crystal was oval in shape, and its surface was very smooth like a cobblestone. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the gem was dark red, as if it was wrapped in a layer of flowing fire. But in reality, the inside of the gem was dark gold, and it emitted an incomparably violent and blazing aura. Ji Tianxing stared at the gem and observed it for a while, then murmured in a low voice, It is indeed a pure and flawless heavenly flame true gold. If I want to repair the sword of burial of heaven, I need to gather 4 top-notch materials. Now that I have the heavenly flame true gold, I only need the wind thunder meteorite iron, the yin yang divine jade, and the golden crow copper marrow. Thinking of this, he closed his eyes and began to meditate, and his primordial spirit entered Qinshin's tomb. Then, his primordial spirit entered the divine weapon pavilion through the second tombstone. In the huge divine weapon pavilion, there was a huge heavenly cauldron in the middle of the main hall, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. There were more than 360 secret compartments carved into the walls of the main hall, and more than 300 kinds of refining materials were stored inside. Each of the refining materials was a rare top-notch treasure, and their value was no less than that of the heavenly flame true gold. There were even many ores and gems that were more valuable than the heavenly flame true gold. Ji Tianxing opened the secret compartments one by one and checked the treasures stored inside to find the materials he needed. After a full 2 hours, he had checked more than 300 secret compartments and only found the yin yang divine jade. As for the wind thunder meteorite iron, and the golden crow copper marrow, the divine weapon pavilion did not have them. Ji Tianxing took the yin-yang divine jade, and left the divine weapon pavilion. Swoosh! After his primordial spirit returned to its original position, he put the yin-yang divine jade, and the heavenly flame true gold into the space ring. Now that I have 2 sets of materials, if I can find the other 2 in the flaming mountain, it will be a success. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, I wonder what grade the burial of heaven will be restored to after I gather those 4 materials and repair the sword body. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately rang in his mind. Those 4 sets of materials are top-notch treasures, and can be used to refine saint-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianxing immediately understood what it meant, and asked in disbelief, Burial of heaven? Do you mean that after I repair the sword body for you, you can be restored to saint level? Of course. The burial of heaven answered without hesitation. Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed, and his heart started to beat faster. That's great. If it can really be restored to saint level, and become a complete holy sword, its power will definitely increase by dozens of times. At that time, even if I encounter a powerhouse at the 5th or 6th level of the crossing calamity realm, I will be able to defeat him. Not long after, Yun Yao returned to the room. Ji Tianxing suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart, looked at her with concern, and asked, Yao Yao, how is it? Did the Luoshui martial god agree? Yun Yao smiled and nodded. Granny Long reported the ins and outs of the matter to the Divine Master. The Divine Master was also quite displeased that the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom wanted to borrow the Reverse Water Divine Sword. However, the North Underworld Mountain and the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom attacked at the same time, and the Divine Kingdom was attacked from both sides. After I explained the situation to the Divine Master, the Divine Master has agreed to give me the Reverse Water Divine Sword in advance. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing showed a gratified smile and nodded. That's good. With the Reverse Water Divine Sword, we can enter the Mountain of Flames. Yun Yao hesitated for a moment and then said, Granny Long will leave tomorrow and go to the Divine Kingdom to get the Reverse Water Divine Sword. She will come back in about 10 days. It just so happens that my heavenly tribulation is coming soon. It will come in about half a month. When I get the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I will definitely have more confidence to pass the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing's body shook immediately, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and a touch of worry. Yao Yao, you are going to pass the heavenly tribulation in half a month? Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Yun Yao shook her head gently and comforted in a soft voice. Tianxing, you don't have to worry about me. It's only the first heavenly tribulation, and it shouldn't be too powerful. Even without the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I am confident that I can pass it. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and nodded. That's true. With your strength and aptitude, passing the first heavenly tribulation will be easy. In that case, we will wait patiently for Granny Long to come back with the Divine Sword. After you pass the heavenly tribulation, we will go to the Mountain of Flames in the Divine Ruins. Chapter 1744. Unknowingly 10 days had passed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion in their respective chambers. In order to face the impending heavenly tribulation, Yun Yao cultivated without any distractions. She tried her best to raise her strength and strengthen her martial foundation. No matter what, she had to do her best to face the heavenly tribulation. She could not afford any mistakes or accidents. 10 days of cultivation had indeed raised her strength significantly. Her martial foundation had become more solid. However, she had already reached the peak of the Essence Soul realm. Even if her strength had increased, it was limited. The date of the heavenly tribulation was approaching. She felt a heavy pressure on her heart. The feeling in her heart was becoming clearer and clearer. Her heavenly tribulation would descend in 6 days. Ji Tianxing cultivated in seclusion for 10 days. His strength was still at the peak of the Essence Soul realm. However, his sword intent had become more condensed, and had formed a basic embryonic form. It was tenacious and indomitable, looking down on the world. This was his sword intent. It represented his will and sword Tao beliefs. The increase in sword intent would not increase his strength, but it would make his sword Tao more powerful and outstanding. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful his sword Tao would be when he completely comprehended sword intent. As for his heavenly tribulation, he still could not sense the aura of the heavenly tribulation. He did not know when it would arrive. In any case, he had already grasped the power of the divine lightning. He did not take the heavenly tribulation to heart. He did not feel that it would be much of a threat. That evening, Granny Long finally returned to Luotian Mountain. After she returned to her residence, she rested for a moment before sending a maidservant to Cloudwater Palace. Yun Yao had been waiting for news in Cloudwater Palace. When she heard that Granny Long had returned, she hurriedly rushed to meet her. The two met in Granny Long's study. Yun Yao bowed to her and asked with concern, "Granny, did your trip to the Divine Kingdom go smoothly?" Granny Long smiled and nodded. "Everything went smoothly. I have also brought back the Water Reversal Divine sword that the Divine Lord bestowed upon you." As she spoke, she took out a treasured sword from her interspatial ring. It was a 3-foot-long divine sword. It was stored in a silver-white sword case. Its design was exquisite and beautiful. The surface of the scabbard was engraved with exquisite patterns and complicated formation runes. It was obvious that there was a seal on it. The sword sheath was suffused with a silver light, like the radiance of the stars in the night sky, emitting a divine aura. Yun Yao stared at the sword box with burning eyes. She slowly stretched out her hands and held the sword box in her hands, carefully observing it. The divine sword was light in his hand and gave him a cool feeling. The silver-white sword hilt was engraved with complicated patterns, and it glowed with a faint ice-blue brilliance. Yun Yao only felt a strong, icy aura coming from the sword hilt and entering her body through her palm. However, that powerful icy aura did not make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, it gave her a feeling of communication. It felt as if the divine sword had become one with her arm, and she could control it with her will. Clang! She held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She pulled out the sword with a little force. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long ice-blue sword blade appeared in front of her eyes. The blade of the sword was as wide as 2 fingers. Its entire body was ice-blue, as if it was made of crystal, sparkling and translucent, spotless. A layer of dense, ice-blue brilliance flowed on the surface of the sword blade, making the divine sword look very mysterious. She could clearly feel that there was a power that could destroy heaven and earth hidden in the divine sword. It was just that it was holding back. Once she swung the sword, she could easily split open the Luotian Mountain and destroy everything within a few hundred miles. This was the power of the divine sword. Yun Yao stared at the divine sword without blinking. She was a little excited and muttered softly, "As expected of the reverse water divine sword refined by the divine master. It is really a rare divine weapon in the world." Granny Long looked at her kindly and reminded her, "Yun Yao, other than this reverse water divine sword, the divine master also imparted a set of sacrificial and sword control techniques. They are all improved for you. I will impart the techniques to you later. Try to refine the divine sword in the next few days. Only after you refine the divine sword will it truly belong to you. It will be connected to your mind, and you will be able to use it like your own arm. Only then will you be able to unleash more power." Yun Yao nodded and put the sword back into its sheath. She cupped her hands and said, "Granny, please impart the techniques to me." Granny Long silently channeled her energy for a moment. Then, a ball of dense white light flew out from her forehead. The X-sized ball of white light contained complicated seal words and symbols. It was shining brightly. Granny Long pointed with her right hand, and the ball of light entered Yun Yao's forehead. Suddenly, a huge amount of information flooded her mind. Her mind was bloated and her consciousness was a little blurry. After 10 breaths, she returned to normal. She bowed to Granny Long and said, "Granny, I will take my leave now. My heavenly tribulation will descend in 6 days." Granny Long nodded slightly and reminded her, "Then you must refine the divine sword in the next few days no matter what." 6 days later, You will undergo your tribulation on the solitary cloud peak in the back mountain. Yunyao nodded and left with the reverse water divine sword. After returning to the secret room in the Cloud Water Palace, she did not care about anything else. She focused on cultivating and refining the divine sword. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Yunyao was sitting cross-legged in the secret room. She was making hand seals with both hands. Her body was surging with boundless magic power and was emitting a dazzling light. In front of her, 2 feet above the ground, floated a divine sword that was completely ice blue in color. The divine sword was shining with a dazzling blue light and was emitting a vast and holy aura. An invisible connection was formed between her and the divine sword. It was as if they had become one. After a while, the sun rose from the east. The golden sun shone on the Luotian mountain. At the same time, the ice blue light on the divine sword disappeared. Yunyao also stopped. Clang! The divine sword returned to its scabbard. It turned into a wisp of icy light and disappeared into her body. Phew! She opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A gratified smile appeared in her eyes. Finally, the refinement is complete. She got up and left the secret room. Ji Tianxing was already waiting outside the secret room. When he saw Yunyao come out, he looked her up and down and smiled. Looks like Yao Yao, you've already completed the refinement of the divine sword? He could clearly sense that Yunyao's temperament had changed. There was a hint of holiness and coldness in her. At the same time, Yunyao's strength and aura had reached a critical point. Her body seemed to contain a power that could destroy the world and turn the universe upside down. Yunyao nodded and said, "It went well. Let's go." After saying that, the two left the Cloud Water Palace side by side and rushed to the back mountain of the Luotian mountain. The back mountain was very steep. Usually, no one went in or out, especially the solitary cloud peak. It was isolated on the edge of the cliff. It was like a stone tablet standing on the peak of the mountain. White clouds and thick fog covered most of the solitary cloud peak. Chapter 1745. Under the morning sun, Lone Cloud Peak was covered with a layer of light gold. There was no grass on the platform at the top of the mountain. The ground was full of uneven rock layers. There were many cracks and pits on the ground, and there were scorched marks left by the lightning strikes. Apparently, the tribulation cultivators of Luotian Mountain often went through the heavenly tribulation on Lone Cloud Peak. When Ji Tianxing and Yunyao arrived at Lone Cloud Peak, Grandma Long was already there and had been waiting for them for a long time. Apart from Grandma Long, there were a few young disciples of God, a dozen deacons and many guards. A few days ago, the news that Yunyao was going to go through the heavenly tribulation had spread on Luotian Mountain. As the first disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most honorable goddess, she had always been the center of attention. Now she was the first disciple of God to go through the heavenly tribulation. Of course, everyone came to watch the show. Seeing Yunyao and Ji Tianxing, Grandma Long looked at them kindly and said in a serious tone, "Yunyao, this is your first heavenly tribulation. It's very important, and you can't make any mistakes. I still need to tell you about the taboos and tricks of the heavenly tribulation, in case there are any accidents. The heavenly tribulation is the supreme will of heaven. There are established rules, and you can't go against them. When Yunyao goes through the heavenly tribulation later, she can only stand on Lone Cloud Peak alone. No one can go near her, let alone help her. When the heavenly tribulation starts, there will be a tribulation cloud that will cover the entire Lone Cloud Peak and suppress only Yunyao. If someone enters the tribulation cloud, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. If anyone helps Yunyao to resist the heavenly tribulation, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. By then, everyone will be annihilated." Ji Tianxing and Yunyao nodded to show that they understood. "Don't worry, Grandma Long. I won't interfere." "Grandma Long, don't worry. I can handle the heavenly tribulation alone." Grandma Long nodded slightly and continued. "The heavenly tribulation of each person is different because of their talent. The heavenly tribulation of mediocre people usually only has 3 heavenly thunders. If they can resist the heavenly tribulation, they can pass it successfully. Those with outstanding aptitude would attract 4 to 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Moreover, the heavenly lightning would also contain the power of other attributes. Peerless geniuses with extraordinary talent would attract more than 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Furthermore, the heavenly lightning would mutate and possess strange and unpredictable powers. Yun Yao, I'm worried that since your aptitude is too outstanding, the heavenly tribulation you attract will also be extraordinary. Regarding this point, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already learned about it, and were well aware of it. Granny, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, and I'm confident that I can deal with it. Yun Yao looked at Granny Long with a firm gaze, her voice filled with confidence. Only then did Granny Long feel relieved. She nodded and said, "That's good. When you're ready, you can ascend Solitary Cloud Peak." After saying that, Granny Long led the gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards and flew up into the sky. Everyone stood in the sky 20 miles away from Solitary Cloud Peak, ready to watch Yun Yao go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing held Yun Yao's hand and encouraged her with a smile. "Yao Yao, I believe that you'll definitely go through it smoothly. You won't let me down. And there won't be any accidents, right?" Yun Yao nodded and said calmly, "Tianqing, wait for me here. I'll be back soon." After saying that, she turned around and flew up into the sky, landing on Solitary Cloud Peak with her clothes fluttering in the wind. Solitary Cloud Peak was surrounded by clouds, and a strong wind was blowing. Yun Yao stood on the peak of the mountain, her clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. Her entire body exuded an otherworldly immortal qi. She stood quietly on a huge rock and closed her eyes, slowly releasing the vast dermic powers in her body. Suddenly a formless and vast aura shot up into the sky, straight into the sky. At this moment, she didn't hide or suppress her power anymore. She completely released it, and showed her most powerful side. The majestic and violent power immediately shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. The surrounding sea of clouds and dense fog were immediately dispersed, and the fierce wind suddenly stopped. Then, thick gray clouds appeared in the sky, coming from all directions and gathering in the sky above Solitary Cloud Peak. After a short while, a cloud with a radius of 50 miles formed above Solitary Cloud Peak. It was like a huge whirlpool that spun rapidly. The golden sun was blocked, and the light in the sky became dim. A strong wind blew from the top of Solitary Cloud Peak, and spread in all directions. A sacred and vast invisible power came down from the sky, and shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. That was the invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Ji Tianqing, the god apprentices, and the guards all felt their hearts sink, and they felt quite depressed. Even Granny Long and the deacons were in awe under the sacred and invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Yun Yao, who was on Solitary Cloud Peak, was in the center of the storm and had to bear the most powerful suppression. Her expression turned serious as she stood proudly on top of the mountain. There was no fear on her face. Soon, the gray clouds in the sky shrunk to a radius of 20 miles and became as dark as ink. The clouds spun faster and faster, and electric arcs started to flash in the huge whirlpool. Granny Long murmured seriously, "The tribulation cloud has formed. The first heavenly thunder is coming." As expected, after a short while, the thousands of electric arcs in the tribulation cloud formed a sacred thunderbolt and struck down. Kaboom! With an earth-shattering sound, a 300-foot-long purple heavenly thunder, as thick as a water tank, struck down from the sky toward Yun Yao. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing, Granny Long, and the other gods' disciples felt their hearts in their mouths. They were all very worried. Yun Yao, who was on Solitary Cloud Peak, was not afraid at all. She raised her head to look at the bolt of lightning, and a brilliant light flashed in her right hand, and a sparkling and translucent ice-blue sword appeared. It was the reverse water divine sword. She made a sword art with her left hand, and held the divine sword with her right hand. She stabbed at the thunderbolt in the sky with all her strength. Swish! 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword radiance appeared in the sky, and collided with the heavenly thunder, with an unstoppable force. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound when the two collided. It spread across the entire Luotian mountain and shocked everyone within a few hundred miles. The heavenly thunder was destroyed by the sword radiance. It exploded into hundreds of purple electric arcs and scattered on Solitary Cloud Peak. Boom! 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 The barren Solitary Cloud Peak started to shake. Many cracks appeared on the ground and gravel splashed everywhere. Yin Yao stood on top of the millstone. Everything around her was safe and sound. She didn't see any lightning. After a while, the gravel and the lightning dissipated. Peace was restored on the peak of the mountain. She looked up at the sky calmly and waited for the second heavenly thunder to strike. In the sky 20 miles away, many gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards were dumbfounded by what they saw. Everyone had a horrified expression on their faces. They simply couldn't believe their own eyes. The sacred and violent heavenly thunder was destroyed by Yin Yao with one strike. Chapter 1746. The deacons, God's disciples, and the guards were not the only ones who were stunned. Even Granny Long's eyes narrowed in disbelief. She had seen others go through the heavenly tribulations at least 100 times over the past few hundred years. However, she had never seen anyone who was going through the heavenly tribulation so confidently. Not only did she face the heavenly lightning head-on, but she had also destroyed it with her sword. She was a martial sage and had gone through the heavenly tribulations before. Every time she went through the heavenly tribulations, it was a painful memory that she could not bear to recall. She knew how scary the heavenly tribulations were, and that was why she was worried about Yin Yao's safety. However, Yin Yao's performance had overturned her understanding of the heavenly tribulation and opened her eyes. It seems like this is the power of a top genius and the divine sword. Granny Long looked at Yin Yao with shining eyes and murmured in amazement. At that moment, the second heavenly lightning was brewing in the calamity cloud vortex in the sky. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs gathered in the calamity cloud vortex and formed a pillar of purple lightning. It was 400 feet long, and it struck down from the sky. The power of the second heavenly lightning was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. Kaboom! Thunder roared, and the dazzling lightning tore through the sky and lit up the dark sky. It was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Granny Long and the rest of the people were nervous again as they looked at Yin Yao. They were worried for her. Ji Tianxing was the only one who looked at Yin Yao calmly. He was not worried. After all, he knew Yin Yao the best. The heavenly lightning pillar was like a huge Zidian dragon as it struck toward Yin Yao. It was about to engulf her. However, she was fearless. Her body was as straight as a sword and her aura was as calm as water. All of a sudden she moved. She formed a sword art with her left hand and drew dozens of arcs in front of her to form a mysterious word. She held the reverse water divine sword in her right hand and stabbed 9 times toward the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 9 rays of dazzling blue sword radiance shot out like lightning. They formed a 9 palaces formation and stabbed toward the heavenly lightning pillar. She did not block the heavenly lightning and chose to face it. This scene shocked Granny Long and everyone else. Their hearts almost stopped beating. Bang 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 bang. A third of an instant later, the 9 giant icy blue swords struck the bolt of heavenly lightning with boundless divine might. A series of heaven-shaking explosions erupted, resounding through the clouds and shaking the entire Luotian mountain. The 9 sword lights collapsed on the spot, shattering into billions of ice crystals that rained down like torrential rain. The mighty and violent heavenly thunder light pillar was also shattered. It split into thousands of purple electric arcs and scattered on the solitary cloud peak. The rocky ground, which was already in a mess, was suddenly filled with dense cracks. Hundreds of large pits appeared, and soil and stones burst out into the sky. A moment later, the smoke and dust in the sky dispersed. Only then did everyone see clearly that Yin Yao was unscathed. There was nothing unusual within 100 feet of her. However, a layer of the entire mountain peak had been shaved off, and it had dropped by more than 10 feet. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning was destroyed by Yin Yao. Otherwise, its power would be even more terrifying. Many of the god's disciples and guards were filled with shock. They had a clearer understanding of the terrifying power of the heavenly lightning. At the same time, everyone was amazed by Yunyao's power and techniques. Just 10 breaths later, the third bolt of heavenly lightning struck. The pitch-black whirlpool of tribulation clouds spat out a 500-foot-long zidian that looked like a giant dragon. The power of this bolt of heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before. Before the heavenly lightning struck, heaven and earth were already filled with violent destructive power. Everyone knew that as long as they did not step onto the solitary cloud peak, they would not be hit by the heavenly lightning. However, many people were intimidated by the heavenly lightning and could not help but back away from the solitary cloud peak to avoid being injured. Kaboom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded, and the heavenly lightning struck. Yunyao was still standing proudly in the wind. Her left hand formed a sword seal, and her right hand waved the divine sword. 24 sword lights danced in the wind. Bang, 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 bang. Another dull explosion sounded, and the 24 sword lights were released. They were like a few ice flowers that appeared in the dark sky. It was extremely gorgeous. The heavenly thunder light pillar also shattered into tens of thousands of electric arcs, crackling and crackling as they scattered in the sky. Thousands of purple electric arcs and the ice flowers complemented each other, creating a different kind of gorgeous scene. At this moment, the crowd did not feel that the heavenly lightning was terrifying. They were all amazed by the rare beauty. The third bolt of heavenly lightning was also destroyed by Yunyao. Granny Long, many of the god's disciples, attendants, and guards were all excited and full of shock. Waves of exclamations and discussions could be heard from the crowd. This is unbelievable. Senior Yunyao actually destroyed 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. This is simply shocking. In the past 1,000 years, who could accomplish such an amazing feat? After this news spreads, Senior Sister's name will definitely spread throughout the entire Shimu continent. Although Senior Sister has the divine sword in her hand, how much power she can unleash depends on her talent and strength. It's already a miracle that she was able to destroy 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. If it was an ordinary person, they would have succeeded in their tribulation after the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Yunyao is a peerless genius. Her tribulation is definitely different. How can there only be 3 bolts of heavenly lightning? Granny Long and the attendants had a new understanding of Yunyao's talent and strength. The god's disciples admired and envied Yunyao. They hoped that they could be like her, facing the tribulation head-on and destroying the heavenly lightning with their swords. Everyone was immersed in shock and amazement. Only Ji Tianxing's expression became serious. He stared at the tribulation cloud vortex with a tinge of worry in his eyes. He knew very well that the first 3 bolts of heavenly lightning would not be a threat to Yunyao. However, the following bolts of heavenly lightning would be much more powerful and unpredictable. Sure enough, thousands of golden, purple, and blue electric arcs appeared in the dark tribulation cloud vortex and quickly gathered together. In the blink of an eye, the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning of different colors gathered together to form a dazzling pillar of heavenly lightning. This pillar of heavenly lightning was different from the previous 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Not only was it more than 600 feet long, but it also contained 3 different types of power. The purple heavenly lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The golden heavenly lightning was the fiercest and could destroy all kinds of defenses. As for the blue heavenly lightning, it could penetrate the body and destroy the divine soul directly. Yunyao held the upstream sword in her hand and looked up at the heavenly lightning that was descending from the sky. A tinge of seriousness flashed past her eyes. The terrifying and invisible power pressed down on her like a huge mountain, causing her feet to sink into a millstone. It was almost impossible for her to move. However, she tried her best to hold on and maintain her proud posture. She refused to bend down and lower her head. She knew very well that the heavenly lightning could not be destroyed. She could only use all her strength to resist it. Hence, she held the upstream sword with both hands and raised it above her head. Then, she brandished the sword and shot out 36 rays of icy sword light. Chapter 1747. As Yunyao chanted an obscure incantation, her body also burst out with a soaring fighting spirit. 36 cold sword radiances formed a mysterious array and started to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the sword radiances formed a round plate, and the cold light lit up the sky, the lone cloud peak, and the surrounding area turned into a world of blue light. The three-colored thunderbolt hit the ice-blue plate and made a deafening sound. The disc collapsed on the spot, exploding into millions of ice shards that shot out in all directions. Swish, swish, swish. Countless ice shards flew across the sky like sword chi and shooting stars. At the same time, the tricolored thunderbolt also exploded, turning into multicolored thunderbolts and lightning. It was like a fairy scattering flowers. Yunyao successfully blocked the thunderbolt and wasn't hurt. However, the top of the lone cloud peak was shattered by the thunderbolts and turned into ruins. Dust, gravel, ice crystal fragments, and lightning arcs spread out like a huge wave. The expressions of the god's disciples, deacons, and guards changed as they stepped back in fear. However, they were too slow and couldn't dodge the impact. At the critical moment, Granny Long leisurely waved her palms, releasing a bright golden light. Swish! The golden light stretched across the sky, forming a tall wall over 10,000 feet in length, blocking the terrifying shockwaves. She had seen this kind of thing many times in the past few hundred years, and could deal with it easily. Many of the god's disciples and guards were still in a state of shock. They all retreated to the sky 40 miles away. Soon, the fifth thunderbolt was formed in the tribulation cloud. There were 4 colors in this thunderbolt, and it contained the power of 4 different elements. Its power was even more terrifying. Boom! Crack! A deafening explosion rang out as a 70-meter-long pillar of lightning ferociously struck towards Yunyao with a dazzling light. The terrifying power made it difficult for her to breathe, and her body was a bit bent. However, she channeled the longevity divine power in her body and struck out with her left palm in a mysterious trajectory. She executed a defensive mystic art and formed a dark green barrier around her. She waved the water-reversing divine sword with her right hand and shot out dozens of icy blue sword radiances. They formed an icy blue dragon and attacked the thunderbolt. Bam! The icy blue dragon collided with the heavenly thunderbolt, and there was a loud sound. The giant dragon instantly collapsed, exploding into countless fragments that splashed across the sky. The heavenly thunderbolt wasn't destroyed, but its power was reduced by a bit before it hit the dark green light shield. Boom! Crack! The dark green light shield and the thunderbolt collapsed at the same time and turned into pieces and thunderbolts that scattered in the sky. The fifth thunderbolt was neutralized by Yunyao again. The process was scary but not dangerous, and the effect was also quite brilliant. The onlookers were shocked, and they became more and more excited. Yunyao didn't look relaxed, and she didn't even have time to look at the onlookers' reactions. She forgot everything and focused on dealing with the heavenly tribulation. Not long after, the sixth bolt of lightning struck again. This thunderbolt was 800 feet long and formed by 5 colored thunderbolts. Its power was extremely terrifying. Before the thunderbolt struck, the entire lonely cloud peak trembled from the suppression. The area within 20 miles became a vacuum. Yunyao bent over and her face became paler. Her legs were also stuck in the millstone, and she couldn't move. However, she activated her Dharma power and used a secret technique to resist the thunderbolt. 3,000 weak water. She let out a low cry and formed a hand seal with both hands. She struck out dozens of hand seals as fast as lightning. She had used one of her trump cards. This was a secret technique that Luoshui martial god had modified for her. It was used with the water-reversing divine sword and could maximize the power of the sword. She had just mastered it 2 days ago, and this was the first time she used it. Swoosh! The water-reversing divine sword flew into the sky and instantly expanded to 1,000 feet long, turning into an icy blue giant sword. Under Yunyao's control, the divine sword spun at an extremely fast speed, spraying out an overwhelming amount of icy blue water light. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet was immediately formed and enveloped Yun Yao within it. Kaboom! The five-colored thunderbolt struck the icy blue light shield and made a deafening sound. The thunderbolt pillar collapsed and turned into five-colored thunderbolts. They scattered in the sky like a huge electric net. The icy blue light shield also shook violently and cracks appeared. It was on the verge of collapse. The light shield was damaged and Yun Yao also suffered a backlash. Her face turned pale, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Pfft! She couldn't help but bend over and cover her chest with her hands. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm and revealed worried expressions. Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as well. His eyes were filled with worry. However, he didn't say anything. He didn't want to distract Yun Yao. Grandma Long looked at Yun Yao. While she was worried, she also felt gratified. Although Yun Yao is injured, she successfully blocked the sixth thunderbolt. She should be able to survive this heavenly tribulation. Others might not know, but she knew very well that a cultivator who could attract six thunderbolts was already an outstanding genius. With Yun Yao's talent, the seventh thunderbolt was bound to strike. Yun Yao could block six thunderbolts and could block the seventh. At most, she would be severely injured. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would be severely injured and close to death after enduring six thunderbolts. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky spun faster and changed. Inside the pitch-black vortex, crimson heavenly fire and golden astral winds appeared. The heavenly flames, wind, and five-colored thunderbolts combined to form a dazzling five-colored thunderbolt pillar hundreds of feet long. Grandma Long's face turned serious when she saw this. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. Yun Yao's seventh thunderbolt contains both heavenly flames and wind. Her talent is indeed rare. She's a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Everyone also realized that the seventh thunderbolt's power would be unprecedentedly terrifying. Their hearts were in their throats. On solitary Cloud Peak, Yun Yao knelt on the ground with one knee under the terrifying suppressive force. She held the reverse water sword with both hands and stood up stubbornly. She looked up at the sky. When the thunderbolt came crashing down, she gritted her teeth and activated her eternal life divine power. She waved the reverse water sword and used her most powerful technique. Heavenly water sword, separate the world. Her voice was sonorous as she shouted. Next, the divine longevity light shot out from her left palm to form a dark cyan umbrella to protect her. She used her right hand to control the reverse water sword and slashed out a giant icy blue sword that was thousands of feet long. The sword radiance suddenly appeared, standing between the sky and the earth. With an unparalleled momentum, it slashed at the 1,000-foot-long heavenly lightning. Chapter 1748. When Yun Yao swung her sword, everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe that she had cut open the sky with her sword and created a crack in the void. The sky above solitary Cloud Peak was really split into two halves by her sword, separating it into two worlds. She had cut off the world with her sword. How terrifying! Only a martial saint would be able to unleash such terrifying power. In the next moment, the giant sword hit the heavenly lightning. Bam! There was a loud explosion, and the sound shook the world. The 100-meter-long heavenly thunder was shattered into thousands of five-colored shards, sprinkling down the heavenly fire that covered the sky and earth. However, even though the heavenly lightning was smashed, the golden wind still carried the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning toward Yun Yao. Boom! 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 The dark green umbrella was hit by thousands of attacks and made a series of explosions. Although the longevity divine light was powerful, it couldn't withstand such terrifying heavenly might. After 2 breaths, the dark green umbrella was smashed into pieces. The strong wind, the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning immediately engulfed Yun Yao and the entire solitary Cloud Peak. Seeing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing and everyone else opened their eyes wide, and their hearts stopped beating. Everyone was silent. After a moment of silence, they came back to their senses and shouted in surprise and worry. Oh my God! Senior sister, she couldn't block it? Impossible! Senior sister blocked the 6th heavenly lightning easily. How could she not block the 7th one? Oh no. Senior sister will be seriously injured, even if she doesn't die. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. If it were any of us, we would have been smashed into ashes. All the gods' disciples and guards were filled with terror. They were extremely fearful of the heavenly tribulation. Yao Yao. Ji Tianqing's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He subconsciously rushed out, wanting to rush up to solitary Cloud Peak and save Yin Yao himself. However, when he was about to rush out, his shoulder was grabbed by an old hand. An unparalleled power came, firmly holding him in place, making him unable to move. He turned his head and saw that it was Granny Long. Granny Long looked at him solemnly, shook her head and said in a deep voice, "Tianqing, don't be impulsive. We have to believe in Yin Yao." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he calmed down and suppressed the anxiety and worry in his heart. After all, if he rushed up solitary Cloud Peak, not only would he not be able to help Yin Yao, but he would also anger the will of the heavenly Tao and send down a punishment that could destroy the world. He stood where he was, gazing at the chaotic solitary Cloud Peak, praying silently in his heart. Around 10 breaths later, the lightning, fire, and wind gradually dissipated. The smoke and dust on solitary Cloud Peak gradually dissipated. Only then did everyone clearly see that the peak of solitary Cloud Peak had been shaved off by several tens of feet. The ground was covered with huge gullies and pits, and countless charred stones were scattered everywhere. Yin Yao, dressed in a white dress, was kneeling in the ruins with one hand on the ground and the other on the reverse water sword. There was a dark red bloodstain on her pure white dress. Her long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, covering her cheeks. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth, falling on the charred stones. Seeing that Yin Yao was not killed by the lightning, and her body was intact, everyone was finally relieved. That's great. Eldest senior sister really blocked that bolt of heavenly lightning. I knew it. How could she fail? Haha. Eldest senior sister has successfully passed the tribulation. She will soon break through the tribulation stage and become a new martial lord. She is indeed a top genius, the Divine Master's most valued goddess. She deserves the title. Today's tribulation is rarely seen even in hundreds of years. It is really a blessing for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. Many gods' disciples and guards cheered with joy. They were excited for Yin Yao. Even Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy stone in his heart was finally lifted. However, no one noticed. Yin Yao was half kneeling on the ground. There was no expression of pain on her face. Instead, there was confusion between her eyebrows. She closed her eyes and silently checked the situation in her body, as if she was trying to solve some mystery. Just a moment ago, the heavenly wind, heavenly fire, and lightning drowned her like a flood. She was prepared to be seriously injured. After she was injured, she would use the immortal divine power to heal her injuries. However, she did not expect that after the violent heavenly fire, heavenly wind and lightning hit her, they would be completely devoured by something or some kind of power in her body. Most of the power of the lightning was neutralized by the mysterious thing. She was only slightly injured. She still had about 70% of her strength. Strange. What kind of power can devour the lightning, heavenly fire, and heavenly wind? Could it be the immortal divine pearl? Yin Yao checked for a while, but could not find the reason. She thought it was the effect of the immortal divine power. At this moment, among the crowd of onlookers, there was a sudden exclamation full of doubt. Didn't eldest senior sister pass the tribulation? Why hasn't the tribulation cloud dissipated yet? The sudden exclamation made the excited crowd calm down immediately. They all looked up at the sky. They saw that the whirlpool in the tribulation cloud did not dissipate. Instead, it became bigger. The dark tribulation cloud was dyed with a layer of strange blood red. The lightning flashing in the whirlpool was also covered with a layer of blood red. This scene made Granny Long, Ji Tianqing, and the others worried and anxious. Damn it! Is there an 8th lightning bolt? Ji Tianqing cursed worriedly. Granny Long's pupils contracted. She was worried and surprised at the same time. Yun Yao attracted the 8th lightning bolt. It has been 800 years since someone with such talent appeared. No wonder the Divine Master treats Yun Yao as his own daughter. With Yun Yao's talent, she will definitely become an Einherjar in the future, as long as she doesn't die prematurely. However, the more talented she is, the more powerful the lightning bolts are. The deacons and disciples of God were shocked by Granny Long's words. Only now did everyone understand what kind of valiant degree Yun Yao's talent and aptitude had reached. However, when they heard Granny Long's last sentence, they were worried about Yun Yao again. Ji Tianxing looked up at the blood-red tribulation cloud and the lightning. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Granny Long, you are very knowledgeable and experienced. Can you tell what kind of lightning this is?" Granny Long stared at the tribulation cloud and observed it for a while. She shook her head helplessly and said, "I have seen more than 100 heavenly tribulations. I know them very well. However, I can't see through Yun Yao's heavenly tribulation. She is not an ordinary person. I am afraid that the 8th lightning bolt she attracted is a mutated lightning tribulation." "What? A mutated lightning tribulation?" Ji Tianxing frowned even harder. Granny Long nodded slightly and explained in a low voice, "The mutated lightning tribulation only exists in legends. I have never seen it with my own eyes." Chapter 1749. What? The heavens arranged this for her. Ji Tianxing was dumbfounded. He could not believe it. If someone else had said this, he would have thought it was ridiculous. However, since it came from Granny Long, he had to believe it. Why would the heavens arrange such a strange lightning tribulation for Yao Yao? He furrowed his brows and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he thought of Yun Yao's identity and guessed something. Is it because Yao Yao is the reincarnation of goddess Yao Guang? Is that why she has to face such a tribulation? This was just his guess. He could not confirm it yet. At this moment, the 8th lightning tribulation had formed in the tribulation cloud vortex. It was a lightning tribulation that was hundreds of feet long. It looked like a blood-red dragon, and it fell from the sky toward Yun Yao. Boom! Crack! A deafening boom shook the heavens, shaking the entire Luotian mountain. Many of the god's disciples and guards turned pale from the shock and felt dizzy. Granny Long and Ji Tianxing were not affected at all. They stared at Yun Yao. Yun Yao had already used her longevity divine power to heal her injuries. She stood on the peak of the mountain. She used the longevity divine light with her left hand, and the water reversal divine sword with her right hand. She was going to use her trump card. However, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Before Yun Yao could use her trump card, the blood-red lightning tribulation struck her at an unbelievable speed and drowned her. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Yun Yao was covered by the blood-red lightning tribulation. She could not be seen at all. The lone cloud peak shook violently. However, it did not collapse. There was no dust or gravel. The blood-red lightning tribulation disappeared in the blink of an eye. No, it did not disappear. It went into Yun Yao's body. Yun Yao was still in the posture of wielding her sword and casting spells. However, she was rooted to the ground like a stone statue. She did not move at all. Such a bizarre scene left everyone dumbfounded. Not only the god's disciples, deacons, and guards, but even Grandma Long was staring at Yun Yao with her eyes wide open. Ji Tianxing also showed a puzzled expression and frowned doubtfully. He stared at Yun Yao, observing her condition and sensing her aura. Fortunately, Yun Yao was not injured, and her life force and magic power aura were normal. Other than being rooted to the ground like a wooden puppet, she didn't seem to be affected at all. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then a burst of discussion broke out. How could this be? Why isn't she moving? Shouldn't the 8th bolt of heavenly lightning destroy the world? How come it didn't even break a single stone? This is too strange. That bolt of heavenly lightning just now was extremely terrifying. I even thought that the solitary cloud summit had been destroyed. I think there's something strange about this heavenly lightning. I'm afraid Yun Yao won't be able to neutralize it so easily. That's right. The 8th heavenly lightning should be the final test of the heavenly tribulation. It can't be weaker than the seventh heavenly lightning. Everyone was whispering to each other. There were many different opinions, but no one could figure out what was wrong. Grandma Long frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her eyes lit up. I understand now. This is not an ordinary heavenly tribulation. This is the inner demon tribulation of the mutated heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing had been pondering the whole time. But when he heard Granny Long's words, a look of realization appeared on his face. Inner demon tribulation. Yes, Yao Yao's situation is very similar to the legendary inner demon tribulation. Grandma Long looked at him in surprise. Tianxing, you've heard of the inner demon tribulation too? Yes. Ji Tianxing nodded and explained. The inner demon tribulation only exists in legends. It is said that it's a test given by the heavens to extraordinary talents. Heaven-defying geniuses could ignore all obstacles and advance at a terrifying speed. Nothing could stop them. The only opponent for such talents is themselves. Or rather, their inner demons. Only by defeating their own inner demons can they be called extraordinary talents. When Ji Tianxing explained the inner demon tribulation, the sky was quiet, and everyone listened attentively. After he finished, Grandma Long quickly nodded in agreement. That's right. Tianxing's explanation is completely correct. Therefore, the inner demon tribulation is the most powerful, most terrifying, and most unpredictable. No external force can defeat it, and no one can help Yin Yao. Only by relying on her own willpower and spirit can she defeat the inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianxing added in a low voice with a solemn expression. If Yin Yao fails to pass the tribulation, her divine soul will be destroyed by the inner demon tribulation. Even if her physical body survives, it is equivalent to death. If she can successfully pass the inner demon tribulation, she will be reborn. She will spread her wings and soar into the sky. No power can stop her from rising. After he finished speaking, he looked at Gu Yun Peak with a burning gaze, and fixed his gaze on Yun Yao. Yao Yao, nothing must happen to you. No matter what, you must pass this tribulation. He secretly clenched his fists and shouted silently in his heart. At the same time Yun Yao, who had been motionless, could finally move. She closed her eyes as if she had lost consciousness. She staggered and ran, waving the reverse water divine sword wildly and stabbing at the sky. Although she was as fast as lightning, she kept circling around Gu Yunfeng and never left the mountain peak. Sometimes she waved her palm to cast spells. Sometimes she waved her sword to kill. Not long after, she muttered something and shouted in grief and indignation. No, don't even think about it. Even if I die, I will never give in. Even if the sun and moon are destroyed, and heaven and earth no longer exist, my heart will still be there. At first glance, she looked like she had lost her mind and gone crazy. But everyone knew that this was not her intention. She was resisting the most dangerous and rare inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianxing and Grandma Long were extremely worried when they saw Yin Yao's disheveled hair and uncontrollable emotions. Fortunately, Yin Yao gradually calmed down after 100 breaths of time. She stabbed the reverse water divine sword into the ground, formed a hand seal, and sat down cross-legged. Then, a dazzling golden light surged from her body, and her aura became holy and solemn. An illusory figure of a goddess that was 300 meters tall and formed from golden light appeared behind her. Half of the golden projection was dyed red by the blood-red light. The holy golden light and the strange blood-red light were in a stalemate. The two were devouring and resisting each other. Sometimes one was strong and the other was weak, and sometimes one was weak and the other was strong. Although no one knew what was going on, they could guess that Yin Yao was resisting the inner demon tribulation and had reached the most critical juncture. Everyone held their breaths and stared at Yin Yao without blinking, hoping that she would succeed. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. The holy golden light slowly gained the upper hand and dispersed all the blood-red light. When the projection of the goddess turned pure gold and no longer had any blood-red light, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky finally dissipated. Without a doubt, Yun Yao had successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.